that Will Levis has that. Yesterday, Will Levis met with the media. He was asked specifically about what he's working on from week 2 to week 3. We know what it is. We've been talking about the rewiring of the brain and things like that. Here's what Will Levis said yesterday.
What is the area that you're trying to work on improvement for week 3?
Just situational football and knowing the times when you have to be uber careful with the ball. You know, whether that's when you're in scoring position and a third down where the throw that you're trying to make isn't even going to get you the first down, and just having that hit my brain a little more quick. And when I'm watching film, not just being like, oh, this is the coverage, this is the down and distance, this is the play, what's the answer? It's adding the fold of, as a quarterback, what's the best, smartest thing to do? What's something that you need to keep in your mind because of the situation that can help your team and protect the ball? So I'm just trying to be consciously every day, just think of those situations and get better in them.
I'm going to be more conscious of when to take care of the ball. Yeah, I don't think it works like that. Again, either some dudes got it or some dudes don't. Again, when I'm telling you that I went to the CMA Fest this year, saw Jelly Roll for the first time, and was like, hey, that guy's pretty good. That tells you how little I listen to country music nowadays. But I know some dudes like Morgan Wallen and Jelly Roll, they got it. You know, I mean, I hate to say it, Jelly Roll probably is not the picturesque country music singer. You know, he and Tim McGraw don't exactly have the same physique. And at the same time, Morgan Wallen's done so many bad things, but it's overlooked because when it comes to music, they got it. When it comes to decision-making in the NFL, sometimes it's like either you got it or you don't. And I don't know, like, what's Will Levis supposed to do? Is he supposed to, okay, now we're inside the 30-yard line, so he's going to then go up to the line of scrimmage and say, all right, whatever I do, don't throw a pick, don't throw a pick, don't throw a pick, don't throw a pick. So now what's he going to do? And again, I know we're talking about the stupid stuff. Like, we're not talking about the ball that got intercepted for Burks. We're talking about the fumble for Spears. We're talking about the shovel pass. We're talking about the stupid stuff. But in his brain, it's all the same. It's like, well, I cannot turn the ball over here to hurt my team. Well, then he's never going to try to fit the ball into a tight window. So that arm strength he has, it's never going to matter. So I'm trying to figure out what he is supposed to do when he says, you know, it's just understanding that sometimes, different than other times, I have to take care of the ball. I don't think it works like that. You can't play quarterback scared. You can't be afraid to throw an interception, even when you're down inside the red zone. I would prefer you not do it. But again, it's like when people say, well, Peyton Manning threw interceptions and Dan Marino threw interceptions, and yeah, they did. Levis can't just be scared to death of turning the ball over. Then so he's going to get to the line of scrimmage. And again, there's a play clock here. So he gets the play in. He relays the play. 29, bubble gum, Z right, shoot, double queen, I, tiger, ready, break. So he gets up to the line of scrimmage. So now how much time's on the clock? 16 seconds? So he's thinking, don't throw a pick, don't throw a pick, don't throw a pick, don't throw a pick. It's 2nd down and 8 at the 32-yard line. And he's standing there thinking to himself, okay, let's see. Let's run the motion of the play. Let's see where the guys are going on defense. And then Ridley's going to run this route. But if this guy's covered here, then he's going to do this. And then this guy's going to, and then Spears is going to do this. And then Boyd's going to do that. And Chick's going to do that. There's a lot of processing that goes on at the line of scrimmage. And if he is taking time to say, okay, whatever you do right here, don't turn the ball over, that's going to take away, in my opinion, from his ability to react, which is what this is all about. And again, with reflexes, either you got it or you don't. Drew Brees once told Floyd he could throw a ball over the middle in the seam based upon which way the linebacker's head was turned. Which means if Drew Brees dropped back to pass and he saw the linebacker's head was towards the defender and not towards him, he could pop it right over his head. Which means if, again, they were facing the direction of the quarterback, he knew what plan B was and plan C was instantaneously. And it's not that some guys are perfect decision makers. Tom Brady was not a perfect decision maker. But like in anything, it's a sliding spectrum. And on one end of this spectrum of decision making and, again, almost this subconscious ability to play the position and understanding what's going on and reacting in live time, on one side of this spectrum is Brock Purdy, who has such little physical talent. And yet, the other talent, the mental talent, Brock's got it all. The other side, in my opinion, is Malik Willis. Remember when Malik jumped back in bounds last year under 2 minutes against the Ravens? Like when Malik threw the ball away on 4th down in training camp against the Arizona Cardinals in a 2-minute drill. You don't throw the ball away on 4th down. So I've seen good decision and bad decision making. And again, to me, it's reflexes. But again, either you have it, I'm just convinced, either you have it or you don't. I can look at a young guy and say he'll improve. Let's use Anthony Richardson as the example. He makes some ill-advised decisions, but if you look at his interceptions, really the big issue with Richardson, it's bad footwork, supplemented by bad coaching. And I can look at it and say, he's 22 years old, he's had 17 starts post-high school, and rationalize that, hey, with more work on mechanics, he could get better. Again, I don't think Anthony Richardson's decision-making is just haywire. I call him Dr. Phil balls. The Vince Young, what were you thinking when you threw that ball? I don't see that from Anthony Richardson. One of his interceptions was on a Hail Mary at the end of the game. Another was a ball that he overshot for Alec Pierce, bad footwork, and he just threw it too high. Those are things that can improve on. But when your natural reaction in the heat of the moment is to flick the ball out or to roll the ball on the ground, I just don't really know how you get better at that. Again, there's nothing insane that Anthony Richardson does that makes me think he needs to, as Levis put it on Sunday, rewire his brain. By the way, let me just say this. Anthony Richardson's coach benching Jonathan Taylor in the 4th quarter, that may need some brain rewiring right then and there. So when it comes to Levis, and he said, hey, well, what are you working on between weeks 2 and 3? Well, I'm just really worrying on focusing on the times that I need to take care of the ball. I'm not very encouraged by that, because now I'm afraid that he's going to get down inside the 40 and play scared. And there is nothing, I believe, nothing you can do in life successfully if you play scared. You can't play blackjack scared and be successful, and you can't play football scared and be successful. The old saying, scared money don't make money. So when it comes to Levis, maybe there's a chance he can work on that. But I don't think you rewire your brain in the span of a week. Let me just say this, though. I'm not expecting to see any massive mental meltdown mistakes against Green Bay, because there's no way he can do that again. There's no way it could be a third week in a row of this. But as far as, again, the crux of the issue here, which is Levis learning to not panic and understand the situation at all times, second nature like it's breathing, sometimes you either have it or you don't. And it feels to me like Will Levis probably doesn't. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. And I don't even know what people's reaction is going to be to what I just said. But there's one stat from Pro Football Focus that I saw that I think kind of highlights this whole either you've got it or you don't. And we'll get to that next. Stillman and Company right here, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
You feel like you saw things quicker, saw the field better maybe week 2 compared to week 1?
Yeah, no, I think I saw and felt everything very well. I feel like I had a good idea of what I was going to be getting and what the answers to that would be based on that, and trusted my eyes and really liked some of the balls that I put on tape. So feel good about how I was seeing everything. Just unfortunate a couple of those plays affected the game.
Ian Levis says he thought he saw the field very well on Sunday.
That's what he said.
When you saw him on the field, did you feel like he saw the field very well?
I don't think I would characterize it as very well, no.
I mean, again, he would know better than I would, but
They watched the tape
and
went through it with the coaches, yeah.
I have a hard time buying that, especially considering what Blake Bedingfield wrote at paulkaharski.com. We already talked about this in the week, but there's a stat at Pro Football Focus that, again, I think highlights this whole, when it comes to playing quarterback, and everybody in every sport says that the premier position is the hardest position of any sport. You talk to these baseball players, and they'll say, hitting a 98-mile-an-hour fastball with a guy throwing a 94-mile-an-hour slider and an 89-mile-an-hour changeup from the same arm slot is the hardest thing to do in sports. You talk to a hockey guy, Peter Laviolette says, playing goalie in the National Hockey League is the hardest job in all of sports. And any football guy will say, playing quarterback's the hardest job. They're all hard. That's why the guys that are very good at it make a crap load of money, because it's hard to do. But the processing that is required at the quarterback position, it's all simultaneous. It's all almost second nature. And yes, there are mechanical things, and you can work on it. You can learn from experience, and but at the end of the day, sometimes you've got it or you just don't. Vince Young had great reactions. Now, he didn't study, and he didn't really read the field, and he didn't do any of that stuff. And if he had tried, maybe he would have been a great quarterback. I think some guys like Mahomes and Favre and Baker Mayfield, again, all at varying different degrees, they've got it where they just feel instinctively that they can do certain things that sometimes get them in trouble, but for the most part, made them better. But there's a stat from Pro Football Focus that I think highlights this when it comes to Will Levis and whether or not he's got it compared to some other guys. And it is their time to throw stat. So Pro Football Focus measures each passing attempt, each drop back, and how many times you have to throw the ball. And I was shocked to see that Will Levis's number, according to PFF, is 2.88 seconds. That's actually not that bad. Brock Purdy is 2.9. So basically the same. CJ Stroud, and I don't know if you guys watched him on Sunday Night Football, but CJ was running around a lot the other day. CJ Stroud, 2.82. So Levis, 2.88 time to throw. Stroud, 2.82. Which means CJ Stroud, who once again looks like a magician, actually has less time to throw the ball than Will Levis does. And yet, Stroud has completed 69% of his passes. Levis has completed 63%. And yes, the Titans' offensive line is bad. We can all agree on that. But this Pro Football Focus metric is saying they're giving Will Levis just as much time to throw the football as Brock Purdy is getting, and more time than CJ Stroud. In fact, when blitzed, Levis's 2.82 seconds to throw is 13th in the NFL, ahead of Matthew Stafford, Jalen Hurts, Baker Mayfield, and Gardner Minshew, along with some other guys. And when he's not blitzed, it's 16th, ahead of both Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes. So yes, the Titans line stinks, but they are actually giving Levis time, comparatively speaking, to these other quarterbacks. Which again takes me back to what Blake Bedingfield wrote. This is at paulkaharski.com. Blake Bedingfield was the scout who convinced the Titans to draft Derrick Henry. And he wrote, the issue with Levis, quote, the issue with Levis is the lack of anticipation on his throws. On third down with 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter, he waited for Tyler Boyd to run to his spot past the sticks and turn around before he released the ball. That allowed the defensive back to easily break up the pass and force a punt. So while the offensive line, and they're terrible, but I think what we're seeing here is while the Titans' offensive line is allowing the most pressures in the NFL, and we see that and say, bad offensive line, Levis is not getting the ball out fast enough. Again, I'm not saying he has all the time in the world back there, but C.J. Stroud is anticipating these throws. Again, like Blake said, Levis takes the ball. Tyler Boyd's running his route. Levis waits for Boyd to get to the sticks, waits to turn around, and waits for Boyd to look at Levis and say, I'm open, throw the ball. And then Levis throws the ball. You can do that in college. You can't do that in the NFL. C.J. Stroud, meanwhile, and this is why I think his number is less, C.J. Stroud is dropping back, and he knows, let's say instead of Tyler Boyd, it's Nico Collins or Tank Dell or whomever, Dalton Schultz, Stephon Diggs. He knows, okay, 1, 2, 3, he's going to be at the spot, boom, ball out. That's the difference. That's the difference. And this is why when Levis talks about, well, I, been spending time thinking about when I need to be careful with the football and when to take care of the ball and not turn it over and not hurt our team. I'm like, yeah, you can't play football scared. You can't go into this and all of a sudden just start saying, well, now I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to be able to wait for this and make sure the guy's open before I throw the ball. It's like, it's got to be quicker. You got to anticipate. You got to throw guys open in the NFL. They always talk about it when guys are coming out. They say, in college, this is open. In the NFL, this is open. And Levis, for some reason, and when Tannehill was getting bad in that 2021 season, the year with Todd Downing, when Tannehill struggled, and if you remember, the struggles really became a thing when all the receivers got hurt. And so he was out there with Chester Rogers and Racey McMath and NWI and Cam Batson and all these Scarbinis. And when that happened, because the guys that he was counting on, the guys that he was, Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith were gone. A.J. Brown was hurt for a lot of that year. And Julio Jones, that was a disaster. And I think some of the problem was Tannehill, who had all of a sudden started to be intercepted, was holding on to that ball a little too long because he wanted to make sure. And if you go back to the third interception against the Bengals, when everybody in the stadium did not want Tannehill to throw the ball, including Tannehill, what'd he do? He waited for NWI to get open. He waited for NWI to turn around. He threw the ball to NWI. It got batted in the air and intercepted by the Bengals. Again, either you've got it or you don't. And with Levis, when I see that he's got enough time, at least according to Pro Football Focus, he's got enough time to throw the ball. He's got more time than Matthew Stafford does to throw the ball. He's got more time than Jalen Hurts to throw the ball. There's no blitz, he's got more time than Patrick Mahomes to throw the ball. And he still is struggling, and he's still getting pressure. He's still getting sacked. That tells me Levis is holding on to the ball too long. And it also backs up what the scout said via the tape, which is he's not anticipating these throws. So, again, yes, the line is allowing the most pressures in the NFL. But is that, again, because unlike Matthew Stafford, he's got less time to throw? Or is it because Levis waits for guys to get open as opposed to throwing guys open? And then what's going to happen when you keep spending all this time beating in Levis's brain, saying, don't turn it over, don't turn it over, don't turn it over, don't turn it over. He's only going to hold on to the ball longer. So when I saw that stat, I was shocked by that. And I know that we haven't watched the Texans. They were on Sunday Night Football. But if I told you this morning when you woke up that Will Levis has had more time to throw than C.J. Stroud, would you have been shocked by that?
Probably.
But again, they measure time to throw, I would assume, based on, hey, guy drops back, ball's out. The ball was out in 2.6 seconds, and the ball's out 2.9 seconds. So then you average the times together. The difference is Stroud's getting the ball out. Stroud's anticipating guys open. Not sure Levis is. And the scout backs that up. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phones on this plus. There is one thing that I do wonder, when it comes to Levis and Callahan. And I do wonder if it's something that Brian Callahan is either already doing or needs to start doing. We'll get to that coming up next. Here on Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We will be giving away a 4-pack of tickets to Metallica later today for the program. So get excited about that. Tune into 102.5 and 106.3 The Game this Saturday for Vandy football. The Commodores on the road at Missouri. Pregame at 1:30, kickoff at 3:15, and coverage is also available on the Game Nashville app and at thegamenashville.com. Oh, let's talk about Window Nation. That's right. I absolutely love my friends at Window Nation. Did you know that most of your home's cold AC this summer leaked out through old windows? Yeah, if you've got old windows, not only are old windows kind of ugly to look at, but they're also costing you money. So with the nice weather here in September, it's a great time to replace those windows with energy-efficient ones that save money on heat for the winter. So call my friends at Window Nation. Again, I had Window Nation out to my home. Window Nation took a look at my home. They look at my windows and say, hey, you don't need to change this. You don't need to. What you need to do is you need to go out there and you need to do what you're doing. Don't get new windows. And I said, wow, that is a trustworthy company. And that's why I trust them. And right now, if you buy 2 windows, you'll get 2 windows free. There's no limit on how much you could save. And you could save even more with 0 down and no interest or payments for 24 months. Again, buy 2 windows, you'll get 2 windows free. And 0 down, no interest or payments for 24 months. So call 866-90Nation or visit windownation.com to schedule a free in-home estimate with their experts. Let them lower your energy costs. That's 866-90Nation, windownation.com.
Will's improvement from week 1 to week 2 to me was noticeable. Everything about how he moved in the pocket, where he had his eyes, just everything about playing the position was better in week 2. I think offensively as a whole, there's a lot of things that were better from week 1 to week 2. We got to get a lot better between week 2 and week 3. And that's just that's the nature of the NFL, especially in the early part of the season, is how quickly you can improve your team and what you do well. I'm really pleased with how he played for the most part, and that didn't change after we watched the tape. And every week you're going to go through with a quarterback, and there's going to be a handful of plays that you could say, hey, what if you could have gone here or here? Here's some things that could have been different. So that's a normal process, whether you throw for 350 yards or 150 yards, that doesn't change. So that part is pretty consistent. But I thought that Will made a really nice improvement from week 1 to week 2.
There you go. That was Brian Callahan talking yesterday, saying, I think Levis made an improvement from week 1 to week 2. By the way, Ian, I've noticed this. Callahan hasn't said that Levis played well on Sunday outside of the mistake. He just says he played better than he played in week 1. Well, that's not a very high bar to cross.
Yeah, I don't know. Can you play well if you make a mistake like that?
Well, you can play better.
Yeah.
So he's not saying he played well. He's saying he played better. And all the stats and everything else would back that theory up. Now, remember,
his completion
you're
percentage wasn't terrible. Yeah.
You're playing at home. So you don't have to go on the silent count, and that probably gives you a little bit more time back there and things like that. So let's just keep that in mind. I do wonder, and this would be a good question for Brian Callahan tomorrow or whenever, but I do wonder how Brian Callahan, this is something I'm going to keep an eye on Sunday because I'll be at the game and I'll be able to see this stuff. I wonder how much time they're going to be breaking the huddle with. Because I remember when Sean McVay got Jared Goff right. And one of the things they said that Sean McVay did was he would get Jared Goff out of the huddle very quickly so that McVay could see the field and Goff could see the field. And then while the coach to quarterback communication system was still up and running, it shuts off with 15 seconds. He could communicate into the helmet with Jared Goff what it was he wanted Jared Goff to do. So I wonder if Brian Callahan, and again, I wasn't thinking about this on Sunday, but I do wonder if Brian Callahan is going to say, hey, let's get in and out of the huddle quicker so that Levis can get to the line, and then I can basically coach him up right before the snap. But if you do that, you got to be very quick. Like, you got to hurry up. And you got to get out of the, you got to get the play call in, you got to get out of the huddle, you got to get to the line of scrimmage. But I do wonder if they're doing that because that might be better than Levis trying to watch film and instead of, oh yeah, this was the right read and this was a good drop back, think more of, oh, well, we don't want to turn the ball over here. Because I'm still not sure that's going to help. Like, I'm not sure that when the bullets are flying that Levis is going to be able to sit there and say, okay, it's 3rd and 7. We're up by 3 points. The other team has Malik Willis at quarterback. There's 4 minutes to go. Whatever you do here on this 3rd and 7, do not throw an interception. And then still be able to run the play and react accordingly. Because if I'm the coach and I'm in a similar situation, I'm calling a draw. And we're going to punt it or whatever just to get the ball out of his hands at this point. Mike says, our phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com at 615-737-1025. Michael is going to kick us off today on Will Levis. Thank you for calling and waiting. Go ahead, Michael.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. How much of that whole 2.88 seconds that he's having to throw the ball, how much do you think that the wide receiver separation or the wide receivers getting open has to play into that? Does he not see the wide receivers getting open on the field, or are they not getting any separation? I just wanted to get your opinion on that.
So supposedly, thank you for the call. Supposedly, according to Next Gen Stats, Tyler Boyd is not getting any separation at all whatsoever. The one guy who I'm pretty certain is getting some separation is Calvin Ridley. And we know that because in the first game, Levis missed him a couple of times. In the second game, he dropped it. And then he made an incredible, and I still think it's a total luck catch. I think they said that it had like a 12% chance or a 14% chance of being completed for the touchdown that Ridley had the other day. But I won't disagree that I think separation in the receivers are certainly a problem outside of Ridley.
Especially man-to-man.
Well, DeAndre's hurt.
Yep.
So take him out. Boyd's not getting any separation.
He's not overly explosive.
Burke sucks.
He's not overly quick. He's more of the long strider than the quick kind of, quick space shiftiness.
I just think he's terrible. I just think Treylon Burks is terrible. And I heard this week that Brian Callahan said, I got to do more things to get him the ball. No, you need to stop doing things to get him the ball. You need to, if you have to put him on the field, he needs to be the third or fourth option. And you need to worry about getting the ball to the guys that actually make plays with the ball, like Ridley and Pollard and Spears. And I'll even put Chig on the list ahead of Burks. I am not interested in Burks. He's terrible. So I'm sure some of this, I'm sure it all, hinges on itself, right? Like when it comes to the receivers getting open or the time to throw, maybe Levis has a little bit more time to throw than CJ Stroud because Brian Callahan's leaving more guys in to protect to chip on some of these edge rushers, which means that Stroud has 5 guys in the pattern and Levis doesn't. So there's a lot of different things that could play into those numbers. I'm just telling you, he's got a lot more time to throw than Ryan Tannehill ever had, except for the 2019 season when Ryan Tannehill's efficiency was similar to that of Joe Montana's. If you forget, in 2019, when the Titans turned things around, they kept talking about the quarterback rating and the efficiency and all the other stuff. And they were like, this is the best, talking about what Ryan Tannehill was doing. This is the best since Joe Montana in the 80s. And that was when Tannehill had 2.91 seconds to throw. Levis has 2.88. Since then, Tannehill, it's been like 2.5 something as quarterback of the Titans. One texter says, Jared, football is to be enjoyed. Thank you for that. Football is to be enjoyed. Will you be happy or angry if Will Levis ends up a successful quarterback? Well, I'll be happy if he ends up a successful quarterback on the Titans. But I hate to break it to you, buddy. Right now, it ain't looking good. This idea of, somebody tweeted me and was like, I tried to give this radio show a chance, but this is garbage. Even if it's true. The guy on Twitter is like, even if it's true, this is garbage. I don't want to hear this anymore. Tell me good stuff about my 0-2 team that can't punt. Oh. There is one good thing. Those athletic quarterback rankings? Will Levis has actually moved up a spot, Ian. He was 31 last week. He's moved up to 30.
Okay.
Do you know why?
Did they take someone off the list? Bryce Young, I guess?
Tua's out.
Tua's
well,
out.
Andy Dalton is ahead of Levis. Tua's out. And Skylar Thompson is now 32. Malik is 31. And Levis is 30.
Okay.
So the bad news is your quarterback still blows, and he's ranked 30th. But the good news is that the quarterback you're probably going to play on Sunday is one spot behind him, and the quarterback you're definitely going to play in 2 weeks is behind him too.
All right,
now,
baby
again,
steps.
It takes like 5 throws for Skylar Thompson to hop Will Levis this week, just so everybody knows. One texter says, I think Levis has an overinflated sense of confidence and thinks he can get away with stuff that Mahomes does because Mahomes can probably pitch the ball out of a sack and make it a touchdown and a top 10 worthy play. I don't think Will Levis is overconfident about anything right now. In fact, I think Will Levis has some serious work to do on his confidence. And I think when Will Levis gets up in front of everybody and talks about how confident they are, that tells me that he's probably not confident. He got up there yesterday and he was talking about, we talked about it as a team that we need to have the confidence we can beat the brakes off of anybody, no matter what our record is. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. That's not how confidence works. I appreciate the idea of being positive, and there is a difference between positivity and confidence. And right now, you tell me, Will Levis is super confident. I don't think Will Levis is confident about anything right now. I think you guys, people keep calling it hero ball. And the one caller after the Bears game said it best. It's not hero ball. It's panic ball. And there is a difference. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. If you want to weigh in, we'll get back to some of your phones, plus the latest on Is Malik Week going to be taken away from us? Don't take Malik Week away from us. We'll get to that next here on Stillman and Company on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. This week's best deal is Daddy Dogs, Nashville's biggest and best gourmet hot dogs. Whether you're taking your office lunch to the next level or saving your life on the late night streets of Broadway, you can't go bigger or better than Daddy's Dogs. Go to thegamenashville.com/deals now to get a $25 gift card for half off while supplies last.
Let's go to a developing story out of Green Bay. Adam Schefter is here. Adam, what's going on with Jordan Love?
Well, he's been back at practice today, Laura, for the first time since he hurt his knee in Brazil in that Friday night game against the Eagles. He was wearing a sleeve, a protective device over his knee, and it still is uncertain whether he'll be able to make it back in time for Sunday's game. But clearly he is making progress. Him being out there is a sign of progress. I continue to go back to what I've been told throughout this process, which is that it was a 3 to 4 week injury. And if that is indeed the case in the end, that would mean that it would put him on track to return next week against Minnesota or the week after against the Los Angeles Rams. But the Packers aren't giving up hope yet that somehow he could make it back this week, which would be an incredibly quick and impressive turnaround if he can get it done. He's out there. He's trying. We'll see if he can make it back on Sunday.
Shefty saying, hey, he practiced yesterday. There's a chance. But in that cut, Shefty said, I'm going to stick with what I originally thought. You know, I originally was told 3 weeks. I think this is going to be a 3-week injury. And then this morning, Ian, did you see Shefty's tweet?
No, I don't think so.
Shefty said it's 50-50 according to a source, and that Jordan Love is day-to-day. And a texter texted in and said that Jordan Love practiced today in pads, and that the texter thinks Jordan Love is going to play. Shefty's tune has changed from yesterday to today, and again, day-to-day thinking there's a pretty good chance. Let me just say this. No! We want Malik this week. We got that. Do you understand? And maybe I'm just thinking this because this is what I want to happen. This is that confirmation bias. Like if you've got a friend who absolutely either adores one of the presidential candidates or despises one of the presidential candidates, they'll tell you right now, they'll be like, oh yeah, my guy or gal is winning. I'll tell you right now. It's like, well, all of the polling and things say it's like basically tied. No. Like, oh, okay. So maybe I'm just thinking this because this is what I want to be the case. But I think Malik's going to play on Sunday for this reason. And again, I'm not an expert on MCL sprains or anything, but the idea that Jordan Love could injure it more, like if it's a 3 to 5 week injury and he's trending in the more 3-week direction, because isn't this kind of like, didn't DeAndre have a similar issue and DeAndre's still not healthy? So a 3 to 5 week injury or whatever it is, and they've got Minnesota up next week. Now, I know this is football, and in football, because there's 17 of these, every game is important. But if I'm Green Bay and I get an initial diagnosis of 3 weeks for Jordan Love, and I know I'm not going to have him with Indy and the Titans coming up, don't I look at that and say, okay, if I can just split with Malik and then get Jordan Love back for the Vikings, then I'll still be in good shape. And they've already won the first game against Indy, so now no matter what Malik would do on Sunday, they'd split. Am I reaching? Because this is what I so desperately want to have happen. I am going to cry if Jordan Love plays on Sunday. Now, I think the Titans will win either way. I think they're going to beat Jordan Love. I think they're going to beat Malik. Because in this league, you know, I just don't see the Titans starting 0-3. But give the people what they want. Give Jordan Love an extra week to heal that knee for the Vikings, and let's see Malik on Sunday. Because if this is going to be a torturous season, I'd like it to at least be fantastically awful. And losing to Malik would be that. Porth and I were texting today, and this might be a topic on the show tomorrow. And I texted Porth, and I was like, what if they lose to Malik on Sunday? And he said it would be one of the most embarrassing losses in franchise history. The only loss that I think I can put up there are two. There's the loss to I believe they were 0-11. The Indianapolis Colts in 2011, they might have been 0-10 when they came in here and they beat the Titans in Mike Munchak's first year. That Titans team finished 9-7, probably make the playoffs if they win that game against winless Indy. And then the other was, Ian, do you remember the Christmas suit game?
Yeah, when they all wore their Christmas suits on the plane traveling.
Yep. They all,
Yeah.
ooh, he, look at our Christmas suits. And Jacksonville stuck a foot up their rear end. That would be the other one. As far as just some of the most depressing and disappointing losses in franchise history. I need Malik. I need Malik on Sunday. Somebody please give me Malik. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Indy Ben texts in. I think Indy Ben and I have been kind of on the same wavelength this week. The worst coaching I've ever seen. And Indy Ben says, this is what I tried to argue with Joe Rexrode this morning. He thinks the offensive line is a huge reason that Levis is terrible, and yet his time to throw is better than that of C.J. Stroud's. I mean, this is what I will say. And this is as gut feeling as possible, which I know I chide most of you for using when it comes to certain things like, crapping on John Robinson. I'm like, well, he won 61% of his game. That doesn't count. I'm like, I went to the game Sunday. So I wasn't keeping up in live time with what was being said or what the pressure count was or anything like that. I was just at the game and saw it. And when I was at the game Sunday, I walked out of it and I was like, the line sucks. But I didn't feel like I felt about the line the last couple of years. The Daly line, the Dillard line, the Duncan line. Like, I didn't feel the way that I felt with Aaron Brewer at center. I mean, I felt like, well, to be honest, and you guys know I can't stand PT, and I think PT sucks, and he does. I was stunned to see that PT had as bad of a day as he had. And I do think that when Blake Bedingfield is telling you in both games, when he's breaking down the tape, again, the scout who convinced the Titans to draft Derrick Henry, when he's telling you Levis is not anticipating throws and is waiting for guys to get open and then throws it, and by the time that the ball gets there, the DB's caught up to it, that kind of all tracks. So, Indy Ben, I'm on your side. I don't know what Joe's arguing. I mean, I have an idea. But Indy Ben, I'm on your side. One texter says that the loss to the JV Texans last year was the worst loss in franchise history. Or we should say Titans history. And then a couple of people are talking about the 59-0 game in the snow. I mean, that was bad, but like that was the Tom Brady and your team sucked. This is Malik. And to be honest, maybe we'll talk about this more tomorrow. Don't you think it's worse to lose to Malik than it is to lose to Case Keenum, who you lost to last year against the JV Texans? That's just me. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. So this has been a big topic around town and a big topic around the country. And it has not received 5 seconds on Stillman and company. I almost feel like the absurdity of this entire thing is beneath me and kind of points to some of my issues with society. We'll get to that next here on the program. Tune into the Chase and Big Joe show from 9 to 11 a.m. tomorrow for your chance to win all-inclusive tickets in the Eurostone Club to see the Kings of Leon at Bridgestone Arena on Thursday, September 26th. Happy birthday, Jared. Contest presented by Green River Whiskey. Green River Distilling Company, Owensboro, Kentucky. Alcohol by volume varies by product. Please drink responsibly. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. TD at 4 o'clock, the Titans open locker room. This is probably what it's going to be. Honestly, this season, the TD Power Hour is usually from 3 to 4. It's probably going to be from 4 to 5 now because of the Titans media schedule this season. It's different from the years before, which I hope everybody's okay with. But if you're looking for the TD Power Hour, that's probably when it's going to be. So a couple of years ago, I got into a discussion. I'm not going to say an argument, but I got into a discussion with one Buck Rising. And Buck, and I love him with all my heart, but Buck sometimes maybe thinks he's like, I don't know, has more authority than he does, if that makes any sense. I forget what the topic was, but I was talking to him about something. I was like, this is a huge story. And Buck was like, it's not a big story to me. And I was like, but it doesn't matter if it's a big story to you. It's a big story to everybody else. And we were arguing about whether or not we get to pick what the big stories are, or if the big stories are the big stories. And so there's a big story that honestly, I'm only bringing up today, and I haven't spent 5 seconds on this because it's not a big story to me, and it has basically not crossed my brain the entire week. Ian, have you seen the outrage that has surrounded some corners of the internet regarding Brian Callahan's outburst at Will Levis based on the bowling ball he threw to Tajay Spears on Sunday?
A little bit here and there.
So I saw on Twitter that Ryan Fitzpatrick came out and complained like a crybaby about it. And I was like, whatever. I mean, again, I'm not going to be one of these guys that's like, well, he wasn't any good, so who cares what he thinks? Because he's a lot better than I was. But I do not stay awake at night thinking, what does Ryan Fitzpatrick think? Just like I don't care that Dwight Freeney said that Will Levis sucks. Like, I don't care. But then yesterday, I was brushing my teeth and I was watching YouTube, multitasking. And on YouTube, they had a 7-minute discussion on NFL Network that ended up being like a panel roundtable about how Brian Callahan has learned to keep his emotions in check and how he needs to, coach Will Levis with love and grace and kindness. And have we really sunken that low as a society that people are upset with how Brian Callahan reacted to what Will Levis did on Sunday? Like, have we really fallen? Like, have we fallen this far that we're sitting here as a society and we see one guy mouth the F word one time and it's like, oh, how dare he show Will Levis up? First of all, I mean, what was he supposed to do? Was he supposed to say, you'll get him next time, Willie? Serious question. What was he supposed to do? Was he supposed to not put his arms out and say exactly verbatim what he said? Because I was sitting about 200 feet above him and I had the exact same reaction. What's Brian Callahan supposed to do? I mean, if Brian Callahan had the exact same reaction I had, which was basically, the and throw your hands just out, whatever, screw you, then we'd have a problem. Instead, Brian Callahan's looking at the scoreboard like everybody else saying, well, what are you doing? Like, to me, showing up Will Levis would have been Brian Callahan going to the podium after the game was over and getting in front of the media and saying, yeah, not my fault we lost today. It's Will Levis's fault for rolling the ball on the ground like a moron. That would be over the line. But he didn't say that. He said it was dumb. It was dumb. He said in the moment he was upset because they had the same conversations last week about the exact same thing. And yet, it's one thing if it's one weenie that gets all upset. That's, sideline, use that for That's one thing. But it's another thing when it's an entire panel discussion that involves former NFL players. Like, if you've ever been to practice and you can hear the coaches talking to the players, you've heard things a million times worse. I worked in women's college basketball and have heard things a trillion times worse than Brian Callahan's justified anger at the dumbest thing he had seen that week that is only eclipsed by the stupidity that he saw last week. And yet they really had an 8-minute discussion on NFL Network about whether or not Brian Callahan was in line for his comments regarding Will Levis. 8 minutes. I don't even know, and I can talk about anything for a long time, and you guys know that. I don't even know if I can talk about this for 8 minutes because I saw the reaction, and I'm like, I was on Twitter during the game at the stadium, and you know how I am. Twitter for me is like the Jared Stillman 24-hour sports network where I just fire off the takes just like we do here on the air. But so I'm at the game, and I'm on Twitter, and I start to see the videos from the TV broadcast of Brian Callahan losing his mind. And I was like, I mean, hey, I get it. I feel it. Good. Fine. Whatever. And then it didn't hit me until John Glennon asked Brian Callahan on Monday about being more aware of the cameras now that he's the head coach. And I'm like, more aware of the cameras? I mean, first of all, he does need to be more aware of the cameras. When you're the head coach, things are different than when you're an assistant coach, period. But Brian Callahan's smart enough to know that. But being weary of the cameras, are we mad that what happened happened? And then Koharski followed up, and Callahan was like, well, you know, I love Will so much, and, you know, I coach him hard, but I love him hard, and I don't want anybody to think that I don't love Will. And I'm like, Brian, you don't have to apologize, baby. It's okay. It's okay. Don't worry about it. But then, just again, it was like it didn't stop there. Had Fitzpatrick crying about it. Again, one guy cries about it. I'm not upset about that. There's always going to be one Nana out there that's like, oh, how dare you? How dare you eat crunchy peanut butter instead of creamy peanut butter? There's always going to be one a-hole out there that's like that. But again, for the league-owned network to be sitting around the table saying, you know, this is a serious issue that we need to discuss. How sad is that for America? How sad is that for the state of where things are? I mean, he used a word that, again, if you want to talk about potty mouths and things like that, and I think it's probably obvious, Ian, that I don't have the cleanest mouth in the world.
I mean, you do an okay job on the radio, but, you know, sure, I would imagine that's fair to say.
You can tell, you can tell that, like, for instance, Paul Koharski curses more than Robbie Stanley. Even though Paul Koharski doesn't curse on the radio, in real life, I think we can all agree, Paul has much more of a potty mouth than Robbie Stanley or Willie Donick, right?
Okay, sure. I'll buy that.
I'll tell you something, you get Willie all riled up sometimes. But, again, I don't have the cleanest mouth in the world. I feel like we're trending more as a society in the direction where those words are kind of becoming more accepted, which may not be a good thing. I don't know. That's for somebody who cares about things more important than I do to get into. But it's okay. He mouthed it. If you know it, you know why he said it. You know what he meant. You know what it. And if you don't know that word because you're 4 years old, don't learn it. And you won't even know what you're looking at. He put his arms in the air like, what were you doing? Because everybody and their grandma wants to know, what were you doing? And the fact that people are so upset about it. I mean, what happened to the old days of Nick Saban grabbing a face mask and shaking somebody by the... You guys remember when Saban would shake him by the face? What happened? What happened to those days? Our society is so freaking soft. Everybody is a crybaby now. It is so depressing that everybody has to complain about everything all the time. It's like, again, I'm sitting there at the game. I felt the exact same way the coach did, and I saw the coach's reaction. And I would say my anger towards the coach was not this sense of, hey, coach, you need to set the example for the players, and you need to. My anger towards the coach was, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? That's how I felt about it. What a soft society we live in. Unbelievable. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. I think I said this years ago. Or I think I said this, I actually think I said this earlier this week, Ian. The story about Floyd and Matthew Fisher-Davis.
Yeah,
Did I tell that this week?
And it wasn't this week. It's probably last week or the week before.
Probably when Levis did that stupid thing last week against Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
So years ago, Vanderbilt lost an NCAA tournament game because Matthew Fisher-Davis fouled the guy from Northwestern, thinking that they were down one instead of up one. Cost him the game. And I put on the grid for the next day, what would Floyd say if he were coaching Matthew Fisher-Davis? And Floyd looks at me and goes, what do you mean? What would Floyd say? I was like, well, if you were the coach, what would you put your arm around and say, hey, it's okay? He's like, I'd look at him and I'd say, you cost us the word Brian Callahan used. You cost us the game. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. I'm going to spend all this time working, coaching, getting ready for a big basketball game, and then you go out there and lose it for everybody else. So, like, I mean, the fact that we're even talking about, do you need to be more aware of the cameras? Yeah, I need to be more aware of the cameras. No, you don't, coach. You coach them. Please. I mean, the lollipopper one time uses one potty word, and it's like, oh, God, NFL Network has to launch an investigation. It's unbelievable. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company. A lot of people do want to weigh in on this. We'll continue on 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Why do you need to be different there? What's wrong with that? You're being human in the moment. Everyone's thinking that.
Sure.
What's wrong with it?
I don't think anything's wrong with it. I don't want to get to points where like I stand up a player on television and I make it about them and not about us. And I think those things, I could do a better job with that. I'm not going to promise you that I'm going to be able to every time. I am emotional enough at times, especially on game day, where, you know, when things go wrong, you get either excited or you get angry, and that's how it happens. But you know, I don't want to do that to Will. That's not fair to Will in that particular case. So yeah, it's not how I want to be perceived and considered. I think outside of this, you know, I think people that don't know me and that's the only thing they see is that. So yeah, that's probably the best way to put it. I don't regret my feelings about it and how I felt in the moment. I just think I can do a better job. Just like I ask our players to control their emotions, I probably should control mine a little bit.
Don't apologize. No need to apologize, Brian Callahan. By the way, I can't remember the last time that the text line was universally in agreement on something until now. This is, I think, the first 100% to zero reaction I've ever seen. And that includes the Caleb Williams purse thing. When I went off about how Caleb Williams has a purse, and I'm like, I just can't take you seriously. If you play quarterback in the NFL and you have a purse, I can't take you seriously. And people in the text line, like a couple got mad about that. You know, oh, Jared, you're just being judgmental. Yeah, it's misogynistic. That's homophobic. I'm like, no, it's pursophobic is what it is in football. But more importantly, this is the first time I've ever seen 100%. I have not seen one person that's like, no, Brian Callahan was out of line. In fact, that cut that we just played right there was the closest we've had to anybody saying that it was inappropriate and it came from Brian Callahan, who did it. But NFL Network has to have an 8-minute discussion about it. Oh, my God. Let's go to Alonzo. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. What's up, Alonzo?
Hey, what's up? I was just saying, I'm visiting. I'm from North Carolina. I'm visiting my future in-laws, and I watched the game, and I know, being a Carolina fan is horrible, but yeah, being hard on Will Levis, I agree. I mean, you were way too lenient on Bryce Young, given we don't have a lot of help around him. But it was week after week, you know, it was, oh, he's going to learn. It's going to come to it. You know, our coaches, I love Coach Canales now, but we're too positive. I'm glad we finally benched him because it felt like we weren't going to bench him.
Alonzo, I'm going to tell you right now, nobody here cares about the Carolina Panthers. And I'm going to tell you on top of that, the problem with Carolina is the owner, and anything else other than that doesn't matter. Until you get another owner, you ain't going to win anything.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Bojangles, but a Bojangles box is worth more than a Carolina Panthers ticket right now. So I agree.
Period. Thank you, Alonzo. Again, I just sometimes it ain't that hard for the doctor to diagnose the problem. And so, again, I love the fact that, you know, congratulations, you got future in-laws and you're visiting them, and I'm happy for you, and great. But, I mean, if you want to come on here and talk about Carolina Panther football, we do not have time for that.
Well, he was just trying to say that they should have been more harsh on Bryce Young.
I haven't watched Bryce Young play, so I can't tell you, but I was thinking about this.
Tough love.
I was thinking about this morning, about whether or not this should have been a topic. And I ultimately decided no, because I don't think I would do this, or I think it's too far-fetched at this point. But let's go back to the 2023 draft, you know, where you took a guard with the 11th overall pick. Let's say Bryce Young was available in 2023 with the 11th overall pick. You know, remember when the Laramie Tunsil bong gas mask picture came out and he slid all the way down to the teens when a lot of people thought Laramie Tunsil could be the number one pick in a draft? Let's say Bryce Young slipped, kind of the way Levis slipped. Put yourself back in that moment. Would you have been yelling and screaming for the Titans to draft Bryce Young at 11? Now, I know Joe Rexrode would have been, since Joe Rexrode said, mortgage the farm to go get Bryce Young. He would have done what Tepper did. And yes, the stock is down, there's no doubt. But just take yourself back to that. The evaluation of Bryce Young. Ian, would you have taken Bryce Young if he was there with the 11th pick in the draft last year?
Instead of Skoronski?
Yes.
Probably.
So even though Carolina has come out and they have said that they are not going to trade Bryce Young, everybody always says they're not going to trade somebody before they trade him. The only time that they trade somebody, Barry Trotz said he wasn't going to trade Askarov, and then he traded it. The only time they say it is when they'll give it away for a bag of footballs. Oh yeah, call us, please. That's when they'll do it. So they've said they're not going to trade Bryce Young, but I don't know. If this were the offseason, and so you could trade Levis for Bryce Young straight up, and Bryce Young could get a whole offseason of Brian Callahan's coaching and time with your receivers and everything else, would you pull the trigger on that?
I'd consider it, yeah.
The problem is that I say, if this were the offseason and it's not. We're in the middle of the season. And so in the middle of the season, if you were to bring in Bryce Young to play quarterback, like he'd have to learn your system and learn your receivers. But I wouldn't rule out, like if Levis continues to suck, I wouldn't rule out picking up that phone. I wouldn't rule it out. And here's why Carolina would, and it would be a 1-for-1 swap, Levis for Young. And here's why I think Carolina might have interest in doing it. They get the contract off their hands. And they get a young quarterback in return. Because if you make that trade, what you would be doing by making that trade is you would be taking the Bryce Young problem off of Carolina's hands and the contract, which is fully guaranteed being a top pick, and it's still a lot of money even on a rookie deal. It's not as much because the signing bonus is massive, and so he's already gotten that. But what you would be doing for Carolina, it's kind of like when the 49ers knew that they weren't going anywhere in the middle of the 2017 season, and they traded for Jimmy Garoppolo. And it was like, all right, let's see if he's our guy. Let's see. So it was something I was thinking might be a topic. And then I, was like, it's too far-fetched. I'm not sure it's a topic. But if Levis continues to stink, that's a question I'll ask. Fitz is going to join us next. That is going to be the first question I ask Fitz. If the Titans continue to stink, would you call Carolina on a 1-for-1 swap before the trade deadline? One texter says you are higher than the highest cloud in the sky to trade Levis for Bryce Young. Higher as in they would never do it, or higher as in that would be so stupid to trade Levis for Bryce Young? We'll ask Fitz next. 615-737-1025. Let's talk Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love my guys at Hiller. They were here this week. They took great care of my home, and I promise you, they can do the exact same for you. You've heard me talk for years about how Hiller's a family, and it is. And this month, Hiller is treating you like family with their Friends and Family Savings event. Happy Hiller Club members can save up to 25% off your first HVAC, plumbing, and electrical repair. And everyone else can get a 10% discount. Present your coupon and save today. Visit happyhiller.com to download a coupon today. And if you're going to book some work, book it at happyhiller.com just like I do. And again, I had Hiller out there. I booked it on Monday. They were out here Wednesday morning, and it was done by 9 a.m. That's how much I love Hiller. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Preds of Falls and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face truck today. Tune in to 93.3 Totally Hits Nashville Saturday for MTSU football. Blue Raiders on the road, at home. I keep doing this. We'll take on Duke at Floyd Stadium. Pregame at 1:30. Kickoff is at 3. MTSU football on 93.3 Totally Hits Nashville is presented by Sloan's Motorcycle ATV. So, again, I was just throwing this out there. If Carolina, when is the trade deadline, Ian? I need to figure out when that is.
I'll look it up.
But I was just thinking this morning when Carolina said, we're not trading Bryce Young. He's still our guy. Okay. Everybody always says that. If this were the offseason.
The Tuesday after week 8.
That's pretty late. So knowing what we know now, what we know about Levis, if they had an offseason to coach up Bryce Young and Carolina would take him 1-for-1, would you do it? I would. And I go back to the draft. I think Carolina has screwed him up more than he's too small and sucks. But again, I'm just saying, hey, we know Levis ain't the guy. At least I know that. You may want to keep waiting. I don't need to. But again, my point was, would you think midway through the year, if things aren't going well, do you pull the Jimmy G?
Actually, after this season is the first season, it's the Tuesday after week 9. They moved it back a week.
Okay. Jason Fitz joins us now on the program, Yahoo Sports, Fox Sports Radio. Fitzy, let's start with that. I wasn't expecting that to be what we'd start on, but, it just kind of came up. So if Bryce Young, and I know they're saying Bryce Young is not available, but if Bryce Young is available, which I think he probably is, would it be crazy to pick up the phone and offer Levis for him straight up, maybe in a couple of weeks?
Crazy? No. Likely? No. It feels like that's just a tough. We don't see that very often. Is it crazy to me? No. Look, Bryce Young coming out was a better prospect than Will Levis, and the Panthers have failed him. And it's just look. Bryce owns part of that, but I think we can be honest here that when you've got a young quarterback and you put how many offensive minds in his ear over the course of one season, I think it's an abject disaster. Also, look at what we've seen right now from Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, both of who were Carolina Panthers quarterbacks recently, right? So we've seen that quarterbacks can get away from Carolina and still play. I think there are concerns about his size, but there's bigger concerns about some of his pre-snap stuff that, we heard coming out of college that he wasn't the best with blitz recognition, with offensive line communication. That's been an issue in the pros. So, how do you fix that? But at the same time, I'm not so married to Will Levis that there aren't many people that I wouldn't take a 1-for-1 trade on. So why not? Look, I'm with you, by the way. I don't mean to be harsh here, but my mom used to always say to me, you can't fix stupid. And you've had 2 straight weeks of a stupid play costing the Titans an opportunity to win a football game. They should have beat the Jets. They had so many chances to beat the Jets and didn't get it done. If I'm in that organization and somebody offers me something for Will Levis, yes. The answer is probably yes, whatever it is. It could be a pack of lime Skittles. And I'd be like, yep, I'm in. Let's go.
How much of Bryce Young's problems in Carolina are them screwing him up?
Probably 70, 75%. Look, I know the size is still an issue, and we always want to talk about that. And frankly, he tries to save himself by running backwards, which doesn't help him. He's got to process some things faster. But, man, you just can't put a quarterback coach and an offensive coordinator and a head coach that are on totally different pages in his ear at once, all telling him the different things, which is multiple people have told us that that's what happened around there with the Frank Reich world. And then you make a coaching change, and then you make another coaching change. And if you're Canales, you got to look around at some point. Man, this guy's so messed up. I don't even think we can fix him while he's playing. Think about how messed up Baker Mayfield when he got to Canales, and all of a sudden he got fixed like that. The fact that hasn't happened with Bryce just shows you how bad it is. And I feel bad for the kid. I think when you are a top draft pick and you fail, the organization has to look in the mirror hardcore, and that's what Carolina has to do.
So I don't think they're going to do that. I think the problem in Carolina is the owner. The problem here, I also think, might ultimately end up being the owner, given the musical chairs and decisions that they've made over the last couple of years. Is it as simple as, hey, Levis cuts out the dumb stuff and they don't get any more punts blocked and the Titans are a solid team? Or is it eye-opening just how disastrous the 2 losses have been?
I think it's eye-opening because, the simplicity of just cut out the dumb stuff. What if the dumb stuff is just wired in your DNA, right? This is an old school reference for, fans that
are my age, but do we all remember Jeff George? Like, Jeff George was that guy that could throw the ball anywhere on the field. It's just the problem was a bunch of the time he threw it to the wrong team. Jameis Winston, a good example of pick after pick after pick and touchdown after touchdown after touchdown, right? Like, you take the good, you take the bad, but it's part of how you're wired. So some quarterbacks, like the concept of I'm just going to coach out the dumb stuff. Well, what if the dumb stuff is actually a part of who you are as a quarterback? And this is the hill I've done repeatedly with Will Levis is that he did the dumb stuff in college too. So, like, this isn't a Titans problem. This is a Will Levis problem. I understand if you can get rid of that maybe you have an okay quarterback. Maybe you have a pretty good quarterback even. But I challenge that there's been any proof of concept that you can get rid of that with Will Levis. It's part of who he is. It's part of who Zach Wilson was. It's part of, like, the concept was the same with Zach Wilson. The concept was the same with Sam Darnold at one point. Like, the number of times we've looked at different guys and said, like, oh, if you could just cut out the dumb mistakes, okay. If it was that simple, then every quarterback would do it.
Yeah, but you brought up Sam Darnold, and Sam Darnold with smart coaching, Kyle Shanahan last year and now Kevin O'Connell this year, looks like a changed man.
Yeah, I think that just took a long time. Like, there's changed coaching and also years of patience. Like, do we want to wait 6 years for Will Levis to figure out that he can't do that stuff? Like, Sam Darnold finally got it, but it took a long time. And the dumb interceptions were part of who he was in college too. Like that. So I just think that when you have a body of work in college that's being supported by the body of work in pros, now it's not just a conversation of can you coach it out. It's like, can you fix the wiring of a player? Like, there's going to be a real conversation about Caleb Williams. We're only 2 weeks in. I think Caleb's going to be great. But there were plenty of people that said, hey, you can't rely on making plays off schedule. Sometimes you got to take what the defense gives you. What has he done in a couple of weeks? He's relied on trying to go off schedule and not taking what the defense gives him. So, like, I do think that you stack it on top of the college game, and it's not either or, it's both that really become part of the identity of a player.
Do you think Jason Fitz is with us on the program? Do you think we're going to start seeing teams sit quarterbacks more? You know, these young quarterbacks have struggled so far this year, whether it's Caleb or Jaden Daniels a little bit. They haven't thrown touchdown passes. Bo Nix hadn't been very good. Now, Bo Nix is like 30 years old. But, again, they're struggling. Bryce struggled. Yes, C.J. Stroud was good. But New England has said, no, we're sitting Drake May. And I think they'll be happy with that decision. Do you think we're going to start seeing teams say, you know what, let's let the young guy learn?
Yeah, I think they should. Like, I keep going back to the interviews that Patrick Mahomes did after his rookie year when he came out in his second year and started to play so well. And he over and over and over again, he credited Alex Smith for teaching him, you know, how to take care of his body, how to break down the film the right way, how to schedule his life as a pro. Like, he had somebody that really taught him so much of what it takes to be a professional. I just think having a tutor do that for you, that's also taking some of that pressure off you while you're a team that stinks, I think New England is handling Drake May perfectly. Chef's kiss to how that's going down. And I know everybody wants to see the young kid play, but man, I look at Anthony Richardson. Like, you just, at some point there's a fine line. You got to get reps. You got to get out there. You got to play. But man, you got to find a way to mitigate some of these mistakes and teach along the way. So I don't think there's one true hard rule on all of it, but I do think the longer a quarterback can sit and learn, the better. Like, I don't think it's an accident that Jordan Love looked so good when he finally got on the field and knocked the rust off, because man, he had a long time to figure out how to be a starting quarterback.
Speaking of Jordan Love, do you expect Jordan Love to play on Sunday against the Titans?
No, everybody I've talked to that has any sort of ear on the ground in the organization does not expect him to play. I don't expect him to play. I think this is the Malik Willis revenge game.
Okay. With that being said, then, if Malik beats the Titans on Sunday, is Amy going to fly off the handle?
She should. I mean, like, look, I even said it when Malik got in the game, was coming in last week, and everybody said, I don't know what to expect from Malik Willis. I said, I do. Like, the Titans looked at Will Levis and said, no, we're comfortable letting this guy out of the building completely. Like, not even having a competition, but like, we are comfortable giving Will Levis the reins. Like, that tells you how little they thought of Malik Willis. So, yeah, if he comes in and beats the Titans, then, you know, frankly, the Packers ran the ball beautifully last week with the running backs and with Malik Willis. If they come in and beat the Titans, if I was the owner of that team, I would lose my mind. Like, that would be absolute. I'd be walking up and down the halls. I'd be going full apoplectic. Like, it would be what you think happens in a movie every single day. I'd be chewing out every bud I could possibly get my teeth into.
By the way, I don't know if you watched the Packers game last week against the Colts. I thought that the game plan on both sides of the ball was completely inexcusable by Indianapolis. I mean, I really thought Gus Bradley should have been fired. I mean, did they not know that Green Bay was going to run the ball with Josh Jacobs 30 times, which is exactly what they did? I mean, just maybe bring an extra guy up in the box. I know that the two high safeties, it's the new trend in the NFL, but good God. And then on the other side of the ball, Steichen. Everybody tells me Steichen's a genius, and I get it. Jalen Hurts looked pretty good with him as the coordinator, but at the same time, like, Anthony Richardson does not need to be throwing the ball 35 times in a game, and Jonathan Taylor does not need to be on the bench in the fourth quarter. Taylor was 103 on 12 carries. I just thought that game plan from Indianapolis, Fitz, was completely inexcusable, and I don't hear anybody talking about that.
Yeah, I think what you had were two stubborn coaches. And, I'll always go back to what former players used to always yell at me at ESPN, that we talk about player ego, but we forget about coaching egos. Man, it just felt like, to your point, Gus Bradley is one of the most stubborn coordinators in the NFL. I believe he looks at his system and says, my system is from the gods, can do whatever I want. Steichen, you're right. I think it was the absolute wrong game plan for the Colts. Like, 100%, like, this was a simple game to win. Stop the run and run the football. And Indianapolis seemed unwilling to do either.
Jason Fitz, last one for you. Do you think the Titans will win on Sunday, regardless of who plays quarterback for Green Bay, or does the quarterback matter as far as whether or not the Titans are going to win?
No, I think the Titans are going to win this game, and maybe it's because I think their backs are against the wall and they should win this game. I'll admit that. Like, Green Bay came in and just said, "Hey, we're going to win despite Malik Willis," and to their credit, they did. But man, I don't think you can't fish very long in the waters of the NFL with the quarterback the way that Malik Willis can play that position. I don't think that's a winning formula. So I think the Titans defense is getting a little slept on. They're going to have a big dominant performance. I think the Titans win this game. Feels like an ugly game, like 21-10. It feels like that sort of game. But I think the Titans win. And if the Titans don't win, then, I've always been one that sits back and says, hey, I don't love hot takes. I don't love yelling. It's like, that's just not who I am. If the Titans don't win, everybody should lose their damn minds. Because, like, if you can't win this game, then you are now officially trying to get the first overall pick in the draft.
Yeah, it's a rock bottom kind of game. Jason Fitz, as always, joining us on the program from Yahoo Sports, Fox Sports Radio. As always, Fitz, great stuff. We'll talk next week.
Appreciate you, brother. Have a great week.
Yep. So I was not surprised at all by the 100%, the 100% of you that said, yeah, this idea that Brian Callahan was out of line for yelling at Will Levis. I was not surprised by that. I am surprised by you at the reaction that I'm getting as far as this Bryce Young. This is just a hypothetical. Throw it out there. Bryce Young, Will Levis, if he continues to stink, do you make a trade for Bryce Young, who, again, I mean, a lot of people thought was pretty good, even though he was always short coming out of college. And I'm a little surprised by the reaction to that. 615-737-1025. Plus, Fitz does say he thinks Jordan Love's out, which, God, I'd love that. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game. And tune in this Saturday for our college football game of the week, 7 o'clock, right here on 1025-106 for The Game, as it's Baylor and Colorado, presented by Twin Peaks. Take your tailgate to Twin Peaks, home of 29-degree drafts and wall-to-wall sports.
the absolute bleep show in Carolina, Charles. First of all, it's just amazing to me. I understand how bad the kid's been. I think they've also destroyed him. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Or at least they've made it really tough on him. First of all, do you believe that they are going to shop him? And second of all, I mean, where's David Tepper rank? I mean, I have to look at Canales' answer the other day as some tacit acknowledgement that Tepper is driving another bad decision in that franchise.
So here's the problem. And it could be a lie. I mean, I spoke to someone there and I was told, no, they're not. And it was after Adam Schefter had brought up on his podcast, hey, maybe, Miami, a potential trade to Miami or whatever. And which seemed really speculative. And I was told by someone there, that's not the plan. Like this is not he's done, we're going to trade him kind of a situation. I don't know if that's true or not. And the problem is, the reason why I don't know it's true or not, it did not come from David Tepper. And that's no matter what you're told by Dave Canales or Dan Morgan or anyone else in that organization, you always know, and it's come from every person who has departed that organization, at the end of the day, any decision can be turned around on a dime by David Tepper. He can change his mind, and he has no qualms, or at least in the past has had no qualms about stepping in and saying, nope, this is what we need to do. Like, you're doing this wrong, or I disagree with this. This is how this is going to change.
Okay, that was Charles Robinson today on the whole Bryce Young thing. And again, remember what happened was they benched him. They said, no, we're not trading him. He's our guy. But everybody always says that. Barry Trotz said they weren't trading Yaroslav Askarov, and guess what? They traded Yaroslav Askarov. So a caller called in who was a Carolina Panther fan and was talking about, I'm glad that Brian Callahan was hard on Will Levis, and, we needed that in Bryce Young, and then wanted to talk Carolina Panthers. And I was like, I'm not actually talking Carolina Panthers. But I did bring up the idea of, hey, earlier this morning I thought about it, and I was like, if this were the offseason and they offered you Bryce Young for Will Levis straight up, I think I'd make the trade. And I'd make it because I did like Bryce Young coming out. I didn't love him. Like, again, I loved Anthony Richardson, and I still love Anthony Richardson. If the Colts want to poo-poo Anthony Richardson like a lot of you do out there, then I'll take him. I'd take him in a heartbeat. I'd drive Will Levis to Indianapolis. I'd go get the nicest car I can find, and I'd just get Will Levis in the back and drive him right up there. But they haven't benched him. They have benched Bryce Young in Carolina. I mean, I'd do it. I'd do it because I just don't think there's anything you have to lose by doing that. And yet, the amount of you on the text line, they're like, no on Bryce Young, I'm actually pretty surprised by. Like right now, if you picked up the phone and called Carolina and said, and I don't buy that Carolina won't trade Bryce Young. I just don't think they'll trade him for Will Levis. But if you picked up the phone and you said Levis for Young straight up, and they said, sold, you guys wouldn't do that? I'd do it. Again, I mean, I liked Bryce Young coming out. And look at what Baker's done, and look at what Sam Darnold has done since they've left Tepper. In fact, in the middle of the 22 season, Tepper fired Matt Rule and demanded Baker be cut, and then he kind of stayed out of it because he had given up on the year. And Steve Wilks and Sam Darnold and DJ Moore put that team back in the playoff hunt. And you guys wouldn't do that for a guy who rolls the ball on the ground? Gerald is up next here on our program. Gerald, thank you for calling and waiting. Go ahead.
Big fan, man. Again, great work. I will say I did watch the Tennessee and Jets game. The first drive I seen was him playing bowling, and I turned it off right then and there. I'm not a fan of him. I liked him in college, and I really wanted him to be good, but from what I've seen, he's not good. But with Bryce Young coming over, I would love to see Bryce Young come over. I really do. I hate that he's in Carolina just because Carolina has really messed him up, I feel like. And I think he should have another shot at with a better team. But for him coming over, because he'd probably end up starting unless they put in Mason Rudolph, but he really doesn't have no one to learn from.
Well, okay, so here's what you'd have to do. Gerald, thank you for the call. Here's what you'd have to do. If you did this, you'd have to start Mason Rudolph for a month. again, this is a totally hypothetical. We're just all friends sitting around having a conversation talk, right? This isn't serious, Ian. Just, I want everybody to know that. But we can have these kind of conversations, right?
What, this Bryce Young hypothetical trade
it's
stuff?
It's not serious. I mean, we're just talking.
Okay, sure.
So we're just talking. If they were to say, hey, we do it for Levis, which again, I do in a heartbeat. Let's say that were to happen, you'd probably have to play Mason Rudolph for a month. And you would, as soon as you make the trade, go down to the podium and say, Mason Rudolph's going to be our starting quarterback. We're signing Johnny Joe to come in here, and he's going to back Mason up this week. You know, probably Logan Woodside because he knows the Cincinnati Callahan stuff. And we're going to let Bryce learn the system before we put Bryce out there. And then in a month, you put Bryce out there, and he's the quarterback for 6 or 7 games, and you decide if you want to move forward with Bryce or not. Again, I really liked Bryce when he was coming out. I really liked Bryce. One texter says, he's too small. We don't need a Kyler Murray. I'm like, Kyler Murray, and I'm not a Kyler Murray fan. Kyler Murray's kicking some ass so far this year. Adam says, does the idea of Carolina getting out of the first-round draft pick contract, which they would get in return for Levis on a second-round contract, make any sense for Carolina to want to do? Yes, it does. I mean, it's not the end-all, be-all, but yeah, it does. That it does. I'm not saying Carolina doesn't want to do it, but they probably wouldn't want to do it. You know, you never know until you ask. Jason Light, the general manager of the Buccaneers, they thought they were going to extend Jameis Winston. As much as we laugh and poo-poo Jameis Winston and all that kind of stuff, they thought they were going to re-sign Jameis Winston. And Jason Light called Don Yee, Tom Brady's agent, 2020 free agency, just checking in. And Don Yee said, it's a good thing you called because they didn't have a ton of options for Brady, and they could sell him on Tampa. So you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. All right, TD is here next, 615-737-1025. By the way, I texted Joe, and I asked Joe if he would do it straight up, and he hasn't texted me back. But I did text Joe Rexroad and ask, would you trade Levis for Bryce Young straight up? TD will join us next. To Will Levis. What does TD make of it? We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. It is a Thursday, which means it's time for the TD Power Hour. Teron Davenport joins us from ESPN.com. TD, how are you?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
I am in a very cheery mood for some reason, but I have just one very simple question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Can Will Levis be fixed?
I think he can. I do think he can. And it's funny because they're playing the Green Bay Packers this week, right? And their quarterback is a guy that a lot of people were ready to give up on and say, hey, go back to the draft and get another guy. And look what ended up happening a few months later. He becomes the highest paid quarterback, in a long time for that temporary moment until others beat it. So it's just another case of what I strongly believe in is don't panic, just let the process play out, trust it, right? And then also don't make a rush to judgment. I think it's 2 games in. Like it is 2 games in. There were mistakes, obviously, but there were good things also. And these mistakes, it's the cost of doing business. I'll put it that way. You go back and you watch the Dolphins game from last year, and there's some plays where you see him make the play, and you're like, no. Well, damn, that was a good play. You know what I mean? And it's the cost of doing business with Will Levis.
So there was a line that Blake Bedingfield had, the former Titan scout, that had in the paulkaharski.com piece that he wrote that does kind of concern me. And he said, quote, the issue with Levis is the lack of anticipation on his throws. On a third down with 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter, he waited for Tyler Boyd to run to his spot, pass the sticks, turn around before Levis released the ball. That allowed the defensive back to easily break up the pass and force a punt. I think you know the play that we're referring to, or that Blake is referring to there.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think there's something to that. I do think that, like when Levis gets up there and he talks about, I got to be more focused on the time and the place and the things like that. There's a fear for me that now he's going to be thinking, I so don't want to throw an interception that he's not going to be willing to make the anticipatory throws.
Yeah, there are some throws where he does get the ball out before the receiver makes his break. And that's the thing that you have to understand. Like, there's going to be yin and yang to it. You talk about anticipation. I mean, you look at the deep throw to Burks that a lot of people have discussed, right? And sure, you want to take the shot, but you look at that and you see the safety bailing out, right? And you see Ridley has inside, the corner is behind him. You see that safety bailing out. You see the corner going with Burks. Anticipate the fact that from the hash mark on the left all the way over to the sideline, all the way down the end is open. So just throw the ball, let him go, get under it, and he probably runs away from the corner, catches it, and it's an even bigger gain. So that's an example of anticipation. But there are other throws that he's made. Like you look at the throw to DeAndre Hopkins, right? It was the slant. I believe it was an 8-yard gain on that last drive, right? He threw it. He knew Hopkins was going to come out of his break. He threw it, and Hopkins came out on that slant, and he reached out and he got it. You're going to have throws where he makes a good read and it throws with anticipation. You're going to have others where he doesn't. We got to remember, he hasn't even played a full season of games yet, so it's way too early to expect everything to be perfect. There are also, though, I will say, signs where it's like, yeah, this guy, I don't know, so it's just, you can't go either way. If you ask me, it's just, it remains to be proven.
What good though is he doing? Like, what is a sign where, there's something so far this season where it's like, that right there is exactly how it's done. That is what a starting quarterback in the NFL looks like. Because the throw that he hit Ridley on, I thought the throw that Ridley dropped was better than the throw that he hit Ridley on. And the throw that he hit Ridley on, to me, that was a total luck ball. And it's great, but it's probably not going to work anymore if you try it. But where are the moments where it's like, hey, like this is what an NFL quarterback's supposed to be.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that was a luck ball. He saw that Ridley had the corner beat, and he threw it out there and allowed his guy to go get it. Like I think that's a plus. You look at throws, right? You look at the Bears game where he hit Ridley across the middle. That's an example. Look at the Jets game where he hit Tyler Boyd on that deep in break in the square in. Yeah, that's an example. You look at you could go back to last year and see some of the throws. You know, that Dolphins game, I encourage you to go back and watch that again. Because there's some throws in there where you're like, okay, yeah, this is what you want from a quarterback. You know, he has multiple throws where I think you could say, you look at the throw that Ridley dropped, right? Or that went through his hands.
Sure.
That was a very nice throw. Look at the throw to Tony Pollard, right? And I know
the one before halftime.
Yeah, I know Pollard got rocked, but that's not, he put it right into place. Like he dropped it in the bucket to him. Yeah, Pollard got rocked, but that's the only place he could have put the ball.
I thought it was a bad decision.
Well, where should he have went?
I just think that if you're going to throw a ball that gets your running back sent to the hospital.
But he didn't get sent to the hospital.
I know, but that was a hospital ball.
I don't know where else he should have went or how else he should have done. I think that was a good throw. That was a very precise pass. And sometimes your guys are going to get, like, it's understood as a pass catcher, like sometimes you're going to get hit. And that's just the bottom line. But I don't see anything wrong with the throw. I don't see anything wrong with the decision either.
Oh, I thought it was terrible. He floated the ball up there. He basically leads the safety right to Pollard. You know, if the safety isn't playing the way that we teach it now in football, which is like, whatever you do, do not, lead with the helmet. Don't get the 15-yarder. If this was 10 years ago, Tony Pollard may never walk again. Like, that's how dangerous that throw was.
You're once again doing something that you're infamous for, and that's like putting your hands out and asking the moment to handcuff you. Like, let's not be so extreme. He's never going to walk again.
To me, those are the kind of throws that get people hurt. And it takes one guy that's just like, all right, I'm going to lay this guy out. These are the throws that Tom Brady talks about when he's like, I hate this stuff.
There's nothing wrong with that throw. I'm looking at it again, right? He hit his back foot and he let the ball go. Like, he threw it and led him to the outside. He led him up the field. The safety came over and made a play. Like, he didn't like lead the safety there at all. If you look at the play, there's no route for the safety to be concerned with. So naturally, he's going to go over to that pass where it's going, because there's no other route, no other deep route. It's not a bad throw at all. That's an example of a very good drop in the bucket pass.
Oh, like, I think it's dangerous.
Football itself is dangerous. Like,
I know, but there's some things where we talk about it in practice, right? When a guy throws a pass, and we're like, if that's a game now, you're gonna
get hit, and he got hit. He got hit. There's nothing wrong with that pass whatsoever. I'm watching it again and again. I watched it 5 times in the time that there's nothing wrong with that pass at all. You can't put it on a line, because if you put it on a line, he's not going to be able to go get it. Like, that pass there's nothing wrong with that pass.
So would you say right now that Will Levis against the Jets, because there was a lot of talk about how the game was improved significantly outside of the rolling of the football, would you say that you feel like Will Levis showed himself well on Sunday against the Jets, or would you still say that probably wasn't good enough as far as, him proving that he's a starting quarterback is concerned?
I think it's a mixture of both. For the most part, he made the right reads. He made the right throws. It's just that one mistake, and you can't take that mistake away, but that one mistake jades a lot of things. And from talking to the OC, the head coach, the quarterback coach, he's working through the progressions the way he's supposed to. He's doing the things he's supposed to do. So I'm going to say it earned him another opportunity to be a starter. I'm not going to say he proved himself to be the starter, because he still had that mistake that he made. But, at the same time, he made some plays here, and I think he played a solid game.
Are you disappointed that he wasn't able to hit the throw to Calvin Ridley around the goal line and was not able to put the ball in the end zone at the end of the game?
I would like to have seen him get the ball to Calvin Ridley on that throw. Now, the end zone throw, and this is where you got to understand the play design and how things work. on that play, right, it's not on him that Chig got jammed, right? That play, Chig is designed to run a clear out, and it's kind of like Boyd is supposed to cut underneath him, but it was supposed to happen, that underneath cut was supposed to happen beyond the end zone, right? But because Chig got jammed, and then there was a little bit of pressure there, Boyd had to break his route off quicker, knowing that, hey, look, I got to get open for my guy, and that's why the route was in front of the goal line. You know what I mean? And look, you got to get rid of the ball. Like, you can't take the sack, so he had to throw it, and that's what happened.
Can I tell you my biggest beef with that goal line series was that I really thought, given the fact that they had saved their timeouts, I would have liked to see them try to run the football, not thinking that they could get the 8 yards into the end zone, but the Jets were. Yeah, well, the Jets were so playing the pass, where it was going to be clogged up, that I think if you run a draw with Pollard, he probably picks up 4 or 5 at least. And now everything with your timeouts, the clock's not really a factor. Now kind of everything's on the table from the 2 or the 3 yard line.
Yeah, I'm curious why they didn't do that. That's a good point. It's definitely a good point, but I think you also got to factor in. I want to say it was that series. I'm checking back now just to make sure that I'm on it. That throw to Hopkins. No, that was the second to the last series where DeAndre Hopkins was being held, and they didn't call it. Sauce Gardner was holding him. I don't know if you remember that play. It was actually, no, it was that drive. It was second and 8. And he was throwing to Hopkins on that the
left corner of the end zone.
Corner there, and Sauce Gardner held him. Yeah, because he gave him that little stick to the inside and then went out, and Gardner fell for that stick, and he held him. So
TD is with us here on the program. So then the question has to be, how much of the Titans' problems right now at 0-2 are Levis, and how much are not Levis? Because there is, another part of this football team. We'll do that next with TD. 615-737-1025, and we'll hit your phones at the end of the hour as we always do. Stillman and Company, the TD Power Hour, 1025, 106 The Game.
Will's improvement from week 1 to week 2 to me was noticeable. Everything about how he moved in the pocket, where he had his eyes, just everything about playing the position was better in week 2. I think offensively as a whole, there's a lot of things that were better from week 1 to week 2. We got to get a lot better between week 2 and week 3. And that's just that's the nature of the NFL, especially in the early part of the season, is how quickly you can improve your team and what you do well. I'm really pleased with how he played for the most part, and that didn't change after we watched the tape. And every week you're going to go through with a quarterback, and there's going to be a handful of plays that you could say, hey, what if you could have gone here or here? Here's some things that could have been different. So that's a normal process, whether you throw for 350 yards or 150 yards, that doesn't change. So that part is pretty consistent. But I thought that Will made a really nice improvement from week 1 to week 2.
That was Brian Callahan talking about his quarterback. TD is with us here for the TD Power Hour. So, TD, I was wondering this today, and I put this specifically for you, which is how much of the Titans' problems, there's always going to be complaining when you're 0-2, but how much of the Titans' problems are Will Levis related and how much are not? For instance, the punt blocking, not Will Levis's problem.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't put everything on him, right? I mean, the defense, you talk to the defensive players, they'll tell you, hey, man, we got to get some turnovers.
Yeah.
We're not getting turnovers. You know what I mean? They'll tell you that. So there's a lot that goes into the formula. And I mean, it is very truly stated when you say the loss doesn't fall on one person. Like, there's always points within the game where something should have gone another way that didn't, and that helped also.
So when it comes to the defense, I'm glad you brought that up. And I know Denard Wilson talked today, so I do wonder if they talked about this. But not only are they not getting turnovers, they're really not getting all that close to turnovers. And again, I know like a fumble is a fumble. And if the Jets don't fumble it, then you can't force whatever. But it's like the corners have done a good job so far, and they've done a good job rushing the passer. And they've done they really never forced Aaron into kind of turnover territory. And I wonder how they kind of flipped that this week for Green Bay. Well, that's not to say they didn't try. There was a point early in the game where, and this is where I really like a guy like Denard Wilson. You say, oh, he's a new play caller, but he really is masterful in how he puts stuff together, right? There was a point where they had a blitz package in. They showed too high, and we know about the tendencies, this and the third. So they showed Aaron Rodgers that, and then they also showed him a blitz coming from that side. But then they dropped Arden Key into coverage on the other side, and they wanted Aaron Rodgers to see all this, and they tried to bait him into throwing the ball to the hot receiver on the right, opposite of where Arden Key dropped back. But Amani Hooker swooped down in there to be in position to pick the ball off. It's basically what I drew up for the Whiteboard Wednesday against the Bears. Like, that's an example of trying to scheme into a turnover, right? But Aaron Rodgers, being a veteran it is, he cocked it, and he saw what was going on, and he recoiled. But guess what? Harold Landry got the sack. You see what I'm saying? So They're making attempts to do it. But if you also go back and you look at what Denard Wilson said when I first asked him about turnovers, right, and what it takes, he said you have to attack the ball aggressively, right? And you got to populate to the football. They need to start. Like, how many times have you seen a tackle and there's 4 or 5 guys in on the tackle? Like, you need to see that more, right? And Denard Wilson even spoke to this point today, where he talked about that second or third guy arriving at the party and punching the ball out. And there's no coincidence that you see them during individual period today and yesterday, they're working on that very thing, punching the football out, because that's an emphasis. And typically, and this is why I would be frustrated if I was a Titans fan or a Titans coach or Titan player, typically what you emphasize is what you produce. They're emphasizing these turnovers and doing drills specifically for it, but not producing them. And that's the problem. Yeah, I did feel bad because you talked about how they were doing the match hands last week. And when Simmons, is trying to do what he's coached up to do, to try to bat an Aaron Rodgers pass, and then his hand gets knocked into Aaron Rodgers' face mask. They're going to call it every time. Yeah, no, they're going to call it every time. And it's not Simmons' fault. I mean, it is roughing the passer. It's not Simmons' fault, but it is a penalty, and they're going to call it, and they're not going to think twice about it, especially when it's Aaron Rodgers. Right.
Point.
But to your point, it did highlight what they had spent the week working on, trying to bat an Aaron Rodgers pass in the air, because my guess is they probably knew, like, hey, if we're going to pick Aaron off, it's going to be because we get a deflection and the ball goes in the air, not we're going to trick Aaron into, making a mistake or something like he's some rookie quarterback. On the blocked punts front, I don't know how to describe it. I don't know. I've just resigned myself that as a Titan fan, TD, I'm just going to live with terrible special teams for my entire life, and it doesn't matter who's coaching them. I mean, it could be the guy the Packers have, Bisaccia. He's a great special teams coach.
Right.
It could be him. It could be me. Anywhere in between, it's not going to matter. When I saw that punt get blocked, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't know. Like, I get on the coach, and I think eventually you almost have to get on the coach on this, but it's like, I mean, I know he's telling them to block their man, and what's happened in each of the two punt blocks is the guy just hasn't blocked his man.
Yeah, it's an eagerness to get down, and it's crazy because, like, the coverage unit, like, you want to, hey, listen, man, we can't give up a big return. You know what I mean? And that's what you're thinking. But you got to understand that the ball has to get off in order for it to get returned. And so you got to remember, like, first things first. It's just like a receiver. It's funny. So after the Eagles game with Saquon, he dropped that ball. My mom texted me, and she's like, he has to catch it before he runs with the damn ball. And it's just the same. Like, you got to block the man before you could go down and cover. And that's not what Chestnut did. And, Colt Anderson said that he has to, coach him up on that. And, yeah, I mean, it's just small things that ended up, leading to a large consequence. And that's what you have. And, man, Ryan Stonehouse, like, I know if I was him back there, I'd be like, yo, what the heck, man? Like, how can we get this right?
Do you think some of this, though, to your point about them wanting to run down there, is because Stonehouse is kicking it so far that it's like, we want to try to cheat just a little bit to try to get up there, because Stonehouse kicks the ball so far that sometimes it's hard for him to not outkick the coverage because he's kicking it so far.
Yeah, but see, the thing is, he gets good hang time on it too. So it could go far, but as long as it's up in the air for a good amount of time to give the guys time to go get it, you know what I mean? It's not an issue. And he's not doing line drive punts. So I don't think that's as much of an issue. I think they understand that they got a ways to go in order to, go get the punt returner. But yeah, you got to first things first, man.
And then on the offensive line front, TD, I, have watched the two games and have not sat there with a pen and compared it to last year or whatever, but I'm not convinced that, even though the line's got work to do and they need to be better, and I love getting on PT, but I am not convinced that it's as bad as the Dennis Daly, the Andre Dillard, and the Jalen Duncan lines. I'm just watching the game. I don't think they're as bad. And then I leave the game, and every website and pressures and Next Gen Stats and Pro Football Focus, and it's like, this is the worst. So where are we on the offensive line?
I think it's bad, and actually, to Nicholas Petit-Ferrer's credit, he spoke about, he said Bill Callahan talked to him about being more aggressive, especially in pass pro. And he was like, some of the guys like me haven't been more aggressive. And he was like, we got to fight. We got to turn it into a fist fight, and we got to fight. And I'm like, oh, his x-rays of his chest x-rays are starting to look different. Right? It looked like he got a little dog in him. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I mean, talk is cheap. You got to go out there and put it on the field. So I think it's bad, but the end of the day, you also have to realize when it's time to help somebody. And that's something that Brian Callahan said, it's partly on him. Like, sometimes we got to help. This week, Rashawn Gary, listen, you got to help that man, Nicholas Petit-Ferrer, go against Rashawn Gary, because Gary is an elite pass rusher. So this is a week where it's going to be individual performance as well as coach. So it could be worse, trust me. but it's going to need to be better if they expect to win.
Did you ask PT if they should start or sit the Packers defense this week?
I got over there late, and there was something else that I was working on specifically, so I didn't get to stay on there.
That's too bad. His fantasy, he's an expert.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
mean, hey.
This is the week, TD, that I feel might be taken from me. Malik week. And I don't want it taken away from me. What we think about Malik, Jordan Love, and all that, the Packers, will do it next with TD. And, of course, we'll hit your phones at the end of the hour. 615-737-1025 here on Stillman and Company. Let's talk FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel Sportsbook is my official sportsbook app. And this year, FanDuel is giving you a chance to win big every Thursday night with FanDuel Squares. It's the same as the Super Bowl Squares, you know, the game that everybody loves to play, only way, way better because the numbers aren't just randomly assigned. You get to pick them yourself, and you can pick as many as you'd like, and you get to see the odds beforehand, and you can bet them live during the game. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/JGM and bet on Thursday night Squares. Plus, if you're new to FanDuel, you can get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. 21 and over and present in Tennessee. First online real money wager, only $5 first deposit required. Bonus issues, not withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
Let's go to a developing story out of Green Bay. Adam Schefter is here. Adam, what's going on with Jordan Love?
Well, he's been back at practice today, Laura, for the first time since he hurt his knee in Brazil in that Friday night game against the Eagles. He was wearing a sleeve, a protective device over his knee, and it still is uncertain whether he'll be able to make it back in time for Sunday's game. But clearly he is making progress. Him being out there is a sign of progress. I continue to go back to what I've been told throughout this process, which is that it was a 3 to 4 week injury. And if that is indeed the case in the end, that would mean that it would put him on track to return next week against Minnesota or the week after against the Los Angeles Rams. But the Packers aren't giving up hope yet that somehow he could make it back this week, which would be an incredibly quick and impressive turnaround if he can get it done. He's out there. He's trying. We'll see if he can make it back on Sunday.
That was Shefty talking about Jordan Love yesterday. This morning, Shefty tweeted out, day-to-day for Jordan Love, 50-50 chance that he plays on Sunday. TD, if I get a vote, I vote no. I want Malik Willis on Sunday. I want a mano-a-mano Malik Willis versus the Titans. And if Malik beats the Titans, it'll be an all-time tire fire around here, which I'm not completely against. And if the Titans win, I'll be happy as a Titan fan, which I'm also not completely against. So I am scared to death, TD, that my dream of Malik Willis and the Titans on Sunday, which seems so likely, it seems so likely after Malik won on Sunday, I'm worried it's getting pulled from me. What are we hearing? What do we know? What do we feel? What do we think, TD?
Well, I'm sure you saw the video that Rob Demoski posted of them during individual period. He was booting out, and he didn't seem to have any hiccup or anything like that in his gait, and he was running over bags. I don't think he plays. I think it's close, and Rob told me that there was a chance that he could have played last week, but I really think they're saving it for Minnesota. This is one of those games where, I mean, if they could go at least 1-1, right, in those two games that he was out, I think they would be pleased. And obviously, you want to give your best shot every week, but I think so. What was Matt LaFleur? He said all the way up until 90 minutes before, that's when they're going to determine it. I would say let's see how he is warming up. I'm gonna definitely make sure I might end up in the opposite end zone on Sunday, watching him, see what he does, you know, as opposed to what we normally do is, you know, on the Titan side. But yeah, I think it's going to come down to that, and they'll have a better idea on Saturday. I would say watch Jeremy Fowler, watch Schefter, and watch Rob Demoski's Twitter because that's going to tell you the best bet on what's going to happen.
Okay, so let's look at the Malik front right here, which is, I know you and I talked about this morning. TD, I thought that the Indianapolis Colts had some of the worst coaching I've ever seen on Sunday against the Green Bay Packers. The fact that it took them 3 quarters to drop somebody extra into the box, they got DeForest Buckner hurt. And on top of it, you know, they let Green Bay run the ball. I know that ain't going to happen on Sunday.
No.
And
you know, for sure that's not going to. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, so what do we think about the matchup with Malik?
Yeah, I think they are going to look to run the football, but they really, the DBs, they got to make sure that they stay home, right? They got to make sure that they don't bite off of play action because, you know, it's known that they're going to look to run the football, right? And I think, you know, the good thing is the Titans are a team that could play well in pass coverage without using a too high. You know what I mean? Like they could drop a guy down and still have solid coverage. So I think that's a good thing. I would imagine that you'll eventually see, you know, some of that big nickel, and even McCreary, you know, he's a guy that could tackle well too. So I think they'll be fine defending the run out of their sub packages. But the big thing for me is this, and we kind of touched on it. You look at obviously you have the gap and the power scheme that they're using. There was a lot of misdirection, and that's why I asked Denard Wilson about, you know, you got these 2 linebackers that, you know, you describe as pit bulls and aggressors, and they get downhill. And these are guys they like to read and trigger. But what happens when they get victim to misdirection and they trigger to the wrong gap? You know what I mean? So that's the thing really to watch, that game, you know, how they're reading their keys, that guard pooling or the different things that they have to read on each run play. They can't get fooled to where their aggressiveness is being used against them. This is something, he's a Hall of Fame linebacker, but it's something you always see done to Brian Urlacher. They would misdirect him let him run himself out of the play, and somebody else has to come clean up. You can't have that this week.
How impressed were you by the throws Malik did make on Sunday against Indy?
Yeah, I mean, the throw that he had to Dobbs was a good one. The touchdown to Dontavian Wicks was another good one.
I thought that was a freaking beauty.
Yeah, and I mean, he has arm talent. I mean, you saw it in the Saints game. That blast that he had to Bryce Oliver. For the 2 touchdowns. You know what I mean? So there's arm talent. Those are really good throws.
What do you? I thought Brian Callahan had a little bit of a tale yesterday in the press conference when he was asked about his corners and about, just giving the receivers, whether it's Dobbs or Reed or whoever, and just saying, all right, L'Jarius Sneed and Chidobe Awuzie and Roger, you guys got your guys. And he kind of took and I forget exactly how the question was asked, but it was asked about kind of letting the corners be the corners and then committing to the run. And he just started talking about, yeah, we really like our corners. Our corners play real tough. Our corners are great. And he clearly kind of moved where the question was. And I think it was because that might be the game plan, which is, hey, you guys got the receivers. If Malik's playing quarterback, you guys got the receivers. Everybody else worry about the run.
Yeah, no, I think that may be something that you're going to see. But Denard Wilson talked about it a bit too, and he was mentioning how he feels Cheeto is back, right? He feels Cheeto Awuzie has his full health back, and he's a guy that they could go ahead and play, and it doesn't always have to be traveling with a receiver. I think that was interesting that he said that. I don't know how they're going to go about this. I feel that. Again, it goes back to what I said, where I feel that they could defend the pass well, out of just having a single high safety, a center fielder. And I think that's because they trust their corners.
TD, how does the game plan change if Jordan Love's active?
I don't think it changes. I think you play the same. I think you play the same, and you work to make him beat you, because even if he is active, the fact of the matter is he suffered a pretty significant injury, a couple weeks ago. So he's still not going to be himself. You want to work to collapse the pocket into his face. You want to make him move, get him off his block, and see how, you want to make him uncomfortable, right? And the bottom line is this: I don't care if he's active or not. He's not going to fully be comfortable on that knee. The question is still going to be there. So you want to make him move around.
Do we know if that game next week is in Lambeau Field or is that in Minnesota?
I'm not sure. I could check for you real quick, but no, it is home. It's home. It's Lambeau Field.
Because I wonder, the Titans field turf is apparently like this super advanced, super
Yep,
field
it's home
turf
game.
kinda.
Yep.
But there's still a sentiment around the league. Like, even though the Titans have a different turf than everybody else has, I still think the players kind of have a sentiment that, like, nope, turf's turf and turf's bad. And the reason I say that is, if I'm Green Bay, isn't there a part of me that also says, do I want Jordan Love on that turf, especially given the fact that field in Brazil was so bad? And that's maybe not why he got hurt, but it was ugly. I wonder if that plays a role in their decision making.
Hey, I mean, that's a good point. It could play a bit of a role, but I mean, end of the day, I think it's just they're just going to let him rock out. However it works. I don't think that's going to be the main factor. It's going to be more or less, how does he feel? How much can he protect himself? The fact that he practiced yesterday and today, I think, is a good thing, and it makes the chances good. But I just feel like they save him for next week.
We will go to your phones next. 615-737-1025 for TD. 615-737-1025. It is not lost on me that the Mets have a 2-game lead in the wild card, and TD is wearing his Darryl Strawberry and Doc Gooden get up. So it's not lost on me, TD. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah,
Your
no doubt good in
questions
the
for
day.
TD.
It's all Darryl.
It's all Darryl today. No, my heart will not be broken one way or another if they make the playoffs or don't. It's almost like a minor league team. Your questions for TD are next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. TD's with us for the TD Power Hour. TD, do you have a thought or do you want to go right to the phones?
Yeah, just two quick thoughts. One, I don't know if you heard Nick Holtz, his press conference today, but he talked about how Will Levis at times will eliminate things like places where he wants to go with the ball pre-snap. I don't know if you heard that, but I thought that was really interesting that he said that, because that could also lead into what some people think are predetermined destinations for the football that he makes. So keep an eye on that. And then the other
When it's
thing,
actually the opposite, it's predetermined where it's not going.
right. Now, the other thing is, if I told you that a guy went 217 completions on 358 attempts, 2,509 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 19 interceptions. If I told you those were the stats in his first season, would you tell me that guy would go on to be a Hall of Famer?
11 touchdowns, 19 picks first season.
2,509 yards his first season. If I told you those results, would you think the guy
Troy
would go
Aikman.
on? I'm not saying who it is. I'm just saying, are those the numbers that would make you say, hey, he's going to be a Hall of Famer?
No, those would make me think he's going to be Bryce Young.
Yeah, well, that's Brett Favre in his rookie year, 2010. So I'm just saying,
Did Favre start as a rookie in Atlanta?
Hold on one second. I'm going to go back to that. 1 second. Hold on. It gave me the wrong stats. Hold on. I'm trying to find that game log.
I will say this, though. Aikman's rookie year was like an all-time debacle. And they lost every game, and Jimmy Johnson said it was the worst team, that he would have traded any player on the team.
Yeah, remember they
so
drafted
bad.
two quarterbacks that year. They drafted two quarterbacks. They had Steve Walsh. Now go ahead to the phones. That's a bad shot on my part. I'll take that. I got to be better.
All good. Kyle's up next here. Kyle, you're on with TD. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Kyle, go ahead.
Good to talk to you, TD.
What's going on?
I'm enjoying watching this defense play, man. I love watching Simmons and Sweat eat up double teams and let them linebackers flying around. The corners, they're legit. It's been a while since we've had that around here. If we'll get this bleep together, can you see this? You know, we should go in 2-2 into the bye. Can you see us making a playoff push still?
It's still early to look at that.
Kyle.
It's way too early to look at that, but it's also way too early to cancel the season. I think that it's not just Will Levis. It's all three phases. Defense has to get turnovers. Because remember, they're at the bottom of the league in turnover ratio. They're dead last, -4. By the way, the Packers are tops, +4. But you got to get that right. You got to get the special teams together. It wouldn't hurt to get a nice return, right? So you need that. And, yeah, of course, Levis has to get his issues together, and offense collectively has to get better.
One texter says, TD, how likely do you think it is the Titans should win against Malik Willis and Skylar Thompson?
I mean, I think they should beat both of them, win both of those games. I would, yeah, I think it's likely that they do, honestly.
One texter says, TD, how many more bonehead mistakes from Levis? Not the mistakes like the interception to Burks, but the boneheaded ones do you allow before at some point you have to change?
And that's the $1 million question. I personally don't think you change from him. I think it's one of those things where you just grin and bear it for the season. But I just wonder, at what point do you risk losing the locker room? Because guys are working hard, right?
Derek brought that up Monday.
And you don't want to put all that work in just to be put in the most likely situation to lose. So it's a balance that Brian Callahan is going to have to figure out, and that's not one that I could say, honestly.
And the thing too is, like, the guys have been very supportive of Will Levis, but I think that only goes into a point,
Yeah.
Where it's like, where eventually it does become a, hey man, I'm busting my tail and this guy keeps making boneheaded mistakes. I think they can live with just the regular mistakes, but it's the truly boneheaded ones that then kind of put the coach in a spot. What do you make? A couple people have asked about this because I was just throwing this out there earlier today. I woke up this morning and saw the headline that the Panthers aren't trading Bryce Young. And I just thought, if this were the offseason, like if this were March, and the Panthers were willing to do a deal for Bryce Young, and normally when someone says they're not going to trade somebody, it means there's a chance they will. I would trade Levis straight up for Bryce Young because I did think that Bryce Young had real talent and was a legitimate high-end quarterback in the draft, and I think Carolina has done their best to screw him up. I ask you this, which is, if Bryce Young was available, would you have any option, and what do you make, or any interest, and what do you make of kind of the scenario that Bryce Young and the Panthers find themselves in?
Yeah, I would have interest, but I haven't watched those two games to really – and I know enough to know what I don't know. So I'm not going to comment definitively on that one, but I would definitely have interest because I do know what I've seen in college, right? But that doesn't always transfer. So I would have to take a closer look at those two games and look a little bit at last year too. You know what I mean? Obviously.
I just kind of felt like from an evaluation standpoint, I thought Bryce Young was a good prospect coming out.
Yeah,
and I know he was short.
Absolutely.
And I know that, he was short and small, which was a detriment, but I definitely thought he was he'd been available at 11 when the Titans picked Skoronski. I would have been screaming, take Bryce Young. And I also think too, again, to your point, I haven't watched the Carolina tape, so I don't, but Baker and Sam Darnold are playing much better than they did in Carolina. Although Darnold was okay there at the end.
Yeah, situations are going to dictate that too. You look at Sam Darnold. Hey, look, good throw to Justin Jefferson, but Jefferson on that 97-yard touchdown. But Jefferson accounted for a good 60 of those 97. You know what I mean? So it's like being in good situations. They help. Mike Evans, he's happens to be one of the best receivers in the league. So I think that will help. Carolina, there's not much there. There's not much.
One texter says, TD, what do you think the Titans' biggest strength is against Green Bay?
I would say their ability to run the football because the Packers are just not good at stopping the run, and it's been that way for years. And
even though Shane Steichen decided in the fourth quarter he didn't need Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on there. First of all, if a team runs for $164 on me in the first quarter, I'm dedicating the whole city to stopping the run. You know what I mean? But that's just me. But I think the Titans running the football, I think that's the advantage that they have. And if I was them, I would get Green Bay in a situation where they're selling out to stop the run and work that play action and get a couple pop plays, that way.
One texter says, TD, what is the most surprising thing you've seen so far at the beginning of the season?
Most surprising thing? That is a good question. I would if he's talking Titan-wise, I would say Titan-wise is just that this defense hasn't created any turnovers because that's just been the emphasis. We've heard turnovers, takeaways, we've heard that over and over and over and over.
I'd say getting two punts blocked to be my Titans thing. That was.
Getting two, but you asked me, right? I'm
True.
telling you, me.
True.
You are punt blocks, and I get it. You know what I mean? But mine is not getting any turnovers.
By the way, I would throw out there just for me for the whole NFL, and I haven't watched it to see the Saints putting 40 points up a game. That's something that I did not have on my big card.
And the Ravens 0-2, losing to the Raiders.
So I was following, how at the stadium they just have the little scoreboard in the corner, and then they every now and then check in on scores around the league, and they give you 2 highlights, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the Ravens had that game won.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, people are like, "Did you see the Ravens lost?" I'm like, "They lost."
Justin Tucker missed a 50-yarder.
And he missed one in the opener.
Yeah,
Father time.
It's gonna start snowing soon.
Father time coming
undefeated.
for him. TD, great stuff as always. We will talk to you next week. Of course, Talking with TD is available as well. We will also talk to you on Sunday for the award-winning pregame show. And if Jordan Love is in, We will have the expert opinion first on the field, like CBS. TD will be Dr. Davenport will be taking a look at that knee on Jordan Love. TD, great stuff as always.
For sure. Appreciate it.
Yep. TD joining us as he always does. And again, just the Titans schedule is going to move that power hour to 4 o'clock, which quite frankly, I don't mind. So there is something that is right up my alley that if I just wanted to wail on the Titans, I could. And a lot of you are. But I'm actually going to defend this part of the football team. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 through the end. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. So I've got to defend something that I didn't think I would defend. And I've got to defend something because a lot of you people, Jared, you hate the Titans. You only say bad things about the Titans. You just this, you that. I will be at the game on Sunday rooting for the Titans. And I was rooting for the Titans against the Bears with my dad. My cousin from Chicago, who's a Bears fan, was over. And I did not enjoy that second half. So I just tell you all right now, you can say that you don't believe me. That's your business. But I do love this football team, but I tell it like it is. And that's why I've got to defend the offensive line. So I don't think that there's been a person alive that has complained more about the Titans' offensive line over the last 3 years than me. Ian, would you say that that might actually be accurate?
Probably, yeah.
I mean, I've told you the story about Pee Wee, the guy that used to call Nick Saban's show every week to complain about the offensive line. I'm like Pee Wee, except I don't get a 2-minute call every week. I get 20 hours on the radio. And in January, I was complaining about the offensive line. In February, I was nervous that they weren't going to do enough, especially when he came out and said that he felt Brian Callahan felt like that PT and Duncan had done a good job or had traits that they liked on tape. That made me very nervous. In March, I was yelling and screaming about Jermaine Illuminor. I was very happy about Lloyd Cushenberry, but I was yelling and screaming about left tackle, left tackle, right guard, and right tackle, as well as center. Then the draft, we all remember how bad I wanted Joe Alt and the meltdown when Joe Alt went to the Chargers and the meltdown when the Titans drafted J.C. Latham. And we talked about right tackle and the right tackle story. And so, again, I don't think I have to prove this to the audience, but there has been nobody who's been more obsessed, in my opinion, with the Titans' offensive line other than Bill Callahan than me. And my obsession lasts a lot longer than Bill Callahan's because his has lasted for 9 months. Mine's lasted for 3 years. And I came out last year before the season and I said, there's no way this offensive line, the one with Dillard and Brewer, and I said, there's no way this can be worse than the line the year before. Because the line the year before was the worst line I'd ever seen from the Titans, and I'll be darned. It was the worst line. So I've got to defend the offensive line they have right now. Yes, I think Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a. PT, and his PT fantasy expert job, I think he stinks. I do. I don't think he's getting any better. I don't think he's going to get any better. You know, TD said that Bill Callahan told him, play more aggressive. I don't think TD's got it, or TD. I don't think PT's got it in him. I think PT is what he is. I think he stinks. I think Skoronski, for being the 11th pick in the draft, he will never justify that pick. He will never be good enough, in my opinion, to justify that. I think Latham is a rookie and he's a work in progress and it's going to take a little bit of time. And I think Lloyd Cushenberry is fine, but he's paid like he's the top center or one of the top centers in the league, and he's not that. But I understand how free agency works, so I'm not going to get caught up over that. But I think he's a fine NFL player. But I don't think this line is as bad as everybody's making it out to be. I watched the Chicago game and felt like they were creating holes, and I really thought Skoronski was a problem. But other than that, I thought the line did a solid job against Chicago. And I went to the game on Sunday against the Jets, and I didn't walk out of that stadium and think, oh, the offensive line. Oh, my God, I got to hold my nose. Oh, wow. I didn't feel that way. And then I was looking up some of the quarterback stuff on Pro Football Focus, and they have their time to throw metric. And it kind of surprised me because in 2024, Will Levis is 13th in the NFL in time to throw and being blitzed, ahead of Matthew Stafford, Jalen Hurts, Baker Mayfield, and Gardner Minshew, which means when Baker is being blitzed with that offensive line that Baker's got with an all-pro left tackle, Baker has less time to throw than Will Levis. Now, maybe it's because Baker gets the ball out faster, but again, still ahead of Stafford and Jalen and those guys. And his time to throw is 16th when not being blitzed, which is ahead of Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes. Again, the ball probably comes out sooner with Mahomes, and the ball probably comes out sooner with Burrow. But, I mean, Kansas City's got offensive line problems, and Mahomes is working through it. In fact, I went back and I said, okay, last year, what was the time to throw for the quarterback? Again, we're talking about 2.88 for Will Levis. 2.88 time to throw. 2 seconds and 2.88 seconds. In 2023, Ryan Tannehill, and Levis was 13th in time to throw and being blitzed. Ryan Tannehill was 43rd at 2.48 and 50th when not blitzed. Levis was 29th last year when blitzed at 2.82 and 40th when not blitzed. So last year, Tannehill, when blitzed, 43rd, when not blitzed, 50. Levis, 29th and 40th. This year, Levis, 13th and 16th. That means they're giving him significantly more time to throw. And granted, it's a small sample size through 2 games. But Will Levis has 2.82 seconds versus the blitz when he had less time last year not being blitzed with that terrible offensive line around him with Duncan and Dillard and Brewer and those guys. And what they're giving right now, again, these are Pro Football Focus's numbers. What they're giving Will Levis right now is significantly better, significantly more time to throw the football than Ryan Tannehill ever had as a Titan, except for 2019 when they had Lawan and Conklin and pretty much everybody was still in their prime. Ben Jones and Saffold. 2019, Tannehill had 291. They're giving Levis 288. 291 and 288 is basically the same. Every other year, Tannehill had significantly less time to throw. And what that also tells me is that the coaches are probably trying to protect Levis. As much as Brian Callahan gets up there and says, I got to do a better job and I can do this, and they probably already are doing some of that. Now, I do have to admit, the pressures last year, the Titans averaged about 15.5 pressures a game, according to Pro Football Focus. This year, they're averaging 16.5 pressures a game. So that would tell you that the line is not better as far as pass blocking is concerned. But ultimately, I am going with, in my gut, this offensive line. They're bad. PD's right. It's bad. They're bad. But they're not as bad as they've been. And while I think PT, I think he sucks. I think Radens has been okay, albeit wasn't great last week. Cushenberry will be fine. And Bill Callahan will get Latham, steady at left tackle. I guess what I'm saying is the Titans' offensive line is bad, but it's not, in my opinion, it's not as bad as it's been, which is kind of a step forward. I remember last year, ESPN.com ranked the top offensive lines after week 1. And for some reason, the Titans ended up in the top 5. I have no idea how, because when I watched the tape, I saw a skittish Tannehill back there that Andre Dillard was getting abused. And I kept saying, guys, this offensive line sucks. And everyone kept saying, no, Jared, you don't understand. ESPN.com says, and I'm like, ESPN.com can say whatever they want to say. I'm just telling you what I saw. That's how I feel right now, which is the Titans lead the league in pressures, and the Titans offensive line could do better. But I think the Titans offensive line is a more dependable group this year than they were last year. And I think there's more upside for this group this year than there was last year. And while I'm still not happy about the offensive line, I would not say that offensive line is my biggest concern right now with this football team. Right now, for me, quarterback is a big concern. I'm very disappointed outside of Calvin Ridley at wide receiver. Special teams, specifically punt block, has been a humongous disappointment. It's been a disgrace so far this season. But I just don't think the offensive line is as bad as everybody's making it out to be. And so, while, again, nobody worries about that unit more than I do, nobody cries about that unit more than I do, I don't think they've been as bad as they've been in the past. The Daly, Duncan, Dillard lines. I think this line's okay with PT on it. They need to get a real right tackle in there. But I just, and again, maybe I'm wrong. Because again, Pro Football Focus says 16.5 pressures this year per game compared to the 15.5 last year for the whole season. But I don't think this line, to me, this line is not why you're 0-2. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phones on that. 615-737-1025. Plus, Will Levis said something yesterday that sounds good. Sounds very good. But I'm not sure it actually makes any sense. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063, The Game.
just want to know from Titans fans, when is enough? Because, again, you're saying give him a little bit more time. How much more time do you need to give him? Honestly, that's a real question. It's like, how much time do you want to see Will Levis underneath center and making these same mistakes that he's made, not just this year, but he made them last year as well. So how much longer do you want him underneath center? Because the longer it seems like he's underneath center, it seems like the more he's going to make these types of mistakes. Again, if you've listened to this show, which I know you have over the last 2 weeks, I'm not saying, throw Will out with the bathwater. Hey, if you want to give him an opportunity to redeem himself, go ahead and do it. But I just want fans to know that the longer they continue to stick with him and the more Will Levis continue to do these same things, the more you're going to lose this locker room. The more guys are going to be looking at you as the head coach or the offensive coordinator or the GM like, y'all brought in a backup for a reason, a guy that has won games in this league, that has led his team to a playoff for a reason. Use them.
That was D. Mace on Monday. I don't think he was mincing words there with his, let's use the word confidence in Will Levis. Again, I think Derek's kind of putting himself inside that locker room saying, hey, I'm not interested. Like, if I'm a Titan player, I'm not interested in that. So Will Levis was asked about confidence, given everything that's happened over the first 2 weeks yesterday. Here's what Will Levis had to say.
One of the important things we talked about today as a team or as a group, and just having confidence regardless of, the seemingly disparity of the situation or moment. We got to come out here, whether we're 2-0, 0-2, 15-0, 0-15, with the same attitude, same confidence, knowing that we're going to go out there and beat the brakes off whoever we play. We need to have that confidence as a team, and we're building towards that. And it's great seeing guys coming out here on a Wednesday after a tough loss like that and playing with the intensity and focus that we did. And that's the only way that we're going to get ourselves in the best position to succeed on Sunday. So I'm proud of how we came out and did it today.
We talked about it as a team that we have to have confidence that we can win and beat the brakes off anybody no matter what, even if we've lost 15 games in a row. Somebody help me out here. See, I don't really think that's how confidence works. I think that's giving yourself a pep talk. I've learned over the years how to grieve, and grieving sucks. Let me tell you that right now. But the one thing that you can't do, whether it's losing somebody close to you, a relationship, whatever it may be, what I've learned in grieving is that the idea of, well, you need to think positively and you need to move on from worrying about your, knock on wood, your father who passed away. You need to just not be sad about that. It doesn't work like that. Like, I know it sounds nice, to pep talk. We should be confident no matter what. That's not how confidence works. That's how positivity works. The idea that we need to walk around the locker room every day saying, hey, you know what? We can beat the Chiefs this week. That's positivity. Confidence. If you were playing the Chiefs or you were playing the Ravens, and I know the Ravens are 0-2, but they're still pretty good. If you were playing the best teams in the NFL, San Francisco, if you were playing that team this week, would you have the confidence that you could win? Or would you want to be positive that if everything went your way, you could win? And when I hear Levis talk like that, I kind of roll my eyes because, once again, that's not how confidence works. Just like grieving doesn't work in the sense that you can just move on from whatever you're upset with. It takes time and time and time. Confidence takes success. They tell the story, Ty Law and Lawyer Malloy do, that they went out to dinner with Tom Brady when he was in his first year as the starter with the Patriots after Drew Bledsoe had gotten hurt. And they're the two captains on the team, and they go out to dinner with Tom Brady, and they sit down with him, and they're like, yeah, Tommy, we're really excited, all that kind of stuff. And Brady looked at him and was like, I'm going to keep the job. And they're like, apparently the two of them, Lawyer Malloy and Ty Law, looked at each other like, over Drew Bledsoe, who's making $100 million? Good luck. 2 years later, 3 years later, I should say, 3 years later, they're in the Super Bowl, and Rodney Harrison is talking to Ty Law about what to do in case the game goes to overtime, and Ty Law looks at Rodney and says, we're not going to overtime. He says, what do you mean we're not going to overtime? We don't have to worry about this. We got Tom Brady. That's confidence. When there is a proof of concept and I know we can beat this team. Because I've been in that situation where I've been with a team where we knew we were going to beat somebody as opposed to a team where we hoped we were going to beat somebody. And sometimes when I hear Levis do this, like he did this last week when he talked about how he knew he has what it takes to be a good quarterback in this league. I'm like, do you? Because I don't know if you have what it takes to be a good quarterback or not. I mean, we're talking about good quarterback. I don't know if Derek Carr has what it takes to be a good quarterback in the league, and he's been doing it for a decade. So, I mean, pardon me if I'm not totally sure if you have what it takes. I think what Levis is doing with some of these press conferences is he's getting up there and he's saying things not to tell them to me or you. It's what he's telling himself. It's like he's telling him, hey, I've got what it takes to be a good quarterback. And again, I'm not exactly sure that's how confidence works. When you say we've got the confidence no matter what, we could lose 15 in a row and we'd have all the confidence. Well, when you played Georgia, when you were at Kentucky, did you have confidence you were going to beat them? Not did you tell yourself, hey, pump yourself up and talk yourself into beating Georgia. Were you confident that you could beat Georgia? And if the answer is yes, you're lying. I'm not saying the Titans don't have confidence, although if I was on that team, I'm not sure I'd have confidence in Levis, especially given, you heard what Derek said. Goodness gracious. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We are to your phones next. 615-737-1025 here on Stillman and Company. 1025, 1063 The Game.
Well, have you tried any non-football or non-traditional things in rewiring your brain, or is it more the commitment to reps and film, like you said off the top?
No, I think it's more so just football. I think it's important, like on my off days, taking like those few hours to just get away from football, and a lot of that's just been sitting on the couch watching football. So it's not like I have anything much going on during the season other than what we have at hand. But I wouldn't want it any other way. I find solace in this, and I think that that's just the best way that I'm going to improve, is just putting all the focus that I can on my job.
Poor Will Levis. I mean, that sounded sad. Ian picked that cut too, by the way. Ian, that sounded sad.
He did sound a little down, didn't he?
That sounded sad. When it's like, yeah, I try on the off day for a couple hours to get away from football. And that's like the guy who blows the game, and he gets up there at the press conference and talks about how no matter what happens, I'll have my wife and kids and my family. It's like, damn, dog. Well, let's hope for the best this week. But just know if you lose to Malik, it ain't going to be very peachy around here. By the way, I don't really care about the Levis cell phone thing, other than I think it's just really odd. Levis's cell phone number somehow got leaked online and people were calling him and texting him. Like, isn't that something that normally like other fans do? Like, if you're a Packer fan, wouldn't you blow up Will Levis's phone before the game on Sunday or on Saturday just to, like, I remember DeMarcus Cousins' phone number got leaked when he was playing basketball at Kentucky. And they put it out there, and all the Mississippi State fans had it, and they were calling DeMarcus Cousins and whatnot. But like Titans fans to leak Will Levis's phone number, that just seems so odd, so unnecessary. One texter chimes in, and I think this might be a pretty insightful text, because I've been harping on this time to throw stat, where Levis has more time to throw this year, 2.88 seconds time to throw the football, than he did last year, 2.82 or whatever it is. And more than C.J. Stroud, and more than Matthew Stafford, and more than Joe Burrow not facing a blitz, and Patrick Mahomes. One texter goes, I think you're misinterpreting the time to throw stat. Time to throw does not have anything to do with how much time Levis actually has to throw the football. It measures how long it takes from the snap to when the ball leaves his hand. Even if the pocket is clean, you'd still like him to have a low time to throw number, because it generally means that he's making his reads quickly. Here's the one thing I'd push back on that with, is Ryan Tannehill's best year was 2020. I think we can all agree on that, but Ryan Tannehill was insanely efficient in 2019. And in 2019, Ryan Tannehill's time to throw was 2.91. So you're telling me that Ryan Tannehill wasn't making reads quickly in 2019, the year where Ryan Tannehill, for all of us, kind of opened our eyes to like, wow, Ryan Tannehill, he's got it going on. I mean, I remember that Ryan Tannehill 2019 year. 2020, Tannehill was the starter, and Tannehill had signed a new contract, and there was no question about whether or not Tannehill was your quarterback. But in 2019, Ryan Tannehill took the job. And you guys know how big of a Tom Brady fan I am. And even I was saying, nah, let's go with Tannehill over Tom Brady, because that's how good Tannehill was that year. The quarterback play was so bad for so long, and then Tannehill shows up, and it was like, God, this is what it's like to have a real quarterback. And the fact that we're saying that in regards to Tannehill is actually kind of mind-boggling, given where everybody was the last couple of years on Tannehill. Ian, what a roller coaster those Tannehill years were.
Yeah, they were.
I mean, I remember he started his first game against the Chargers, and I was kind of against it because I was a pro Marcus guy, which I'm not proud to admit, but I'm not going to lie to you. I was a pro Marcus guy. And then Tannehill got the job, and I thought the Titans did everything to screw Marcus, and I didn't think it was fair. And Tannehill goes out there and immediately just starts connecting more. Connecting with Davis and connecting with Jonnu Smith and connecting with A.J. Brown. And even, I think, Delaney Walker, he might have thrown the ball to a couple of times. But really, it was Jonnu, Corey Davis, and A.J. that he was really throwing the ball to a lot. And then they won the first game. I can't remember the second game, Tannehill. It might have been that Carolina game where they got beat. And then right after that, they played the Chiefs at home. And Tannehill had a great game and led them back with a fourth quarter comeback. And then they played Jacksonville right around Thanksgiving, and Tannehill kicked ass. And I was like, that's guy. And that guy was 2.91. So you're telling me that that's not a good sign that Tannehill's best year or most efficient year was 2.91? The year that Tannehill made the Pro Bowl? That I have a hard time with. But I am totally for, if you're telling me that I'm not interpreting the Pro Football Focus stats right, I'm not going to be somebody to sit here and say, no, I am, because, hey, I'm still, I don't want to say new to this, but I'm still kind of getting in some of this. Devontae says, Derek Carr is absolutely a good quarterback in the NFL. What are you today? Let's let it go a little bit longer than 2 weeks. Now, if Derek Carr is that dude this year with the Saints, and my theory on the Saints is they crushed Carolina, who sucks, and they didn't really smell their farts after they crushed Carolina, because Carolina stinks and everybody knows it. But I think Dallas, and again, I didn't watch the Dallas-New Orleans game, but I think Dallas was kind of smelling their farts after they embarrassed Cleveland, and so maybe Dallas was a little fat and happy ahead of the Saints game. But if that is the case, that the Saints are legit through 2 weeks, doesn't more of the credit go to Clint Kubiak than it does to Derek Carr? Because we know what Derek Carr is. I'm just saying. Again, I haven't watched a second of Saints football this year. So to have an opinion on it would be almost impossible. But if I had to have an opinion, that's the opinion that I think I would have. One texter says, I'm still ride or die for Tannehill, strictly because, like you said, it was the first time I saw a real quarterback wearing a Titans jersey in a decade. You know what's funny? And again, I was in favor of the A.J. Brown trade, and we know how that went down. I mean, I wasn't like pushing for an A.J. Brown trade. I wasn't saying they need to trade A.J., but when they did, I said I understood. And so count me in on that referendum, which was a disaster, and I'm willing to admit it. But I saw Colin Cowherd. Ian, I don't know if you saw this today. Colin Cowherd was on TV. He was talking about how Jalen Hurts with A.J. Brown is a superstar, and Jalen Hurts without A.J. Brown is like a backup quarterback. And I'm like, yeah, I've seen that one before.
Yeah, we said that about Tannehill.
I'm like, I've seen that before. Heard that.
At one point, we even discussed if A.J. Brown was more important to the offense than Derrick Henry.
And he was. Because in that 2021 year, when Derrick Henry got hurt, they still won games. When A.J. got hurt, they lost to the Texans. And that's when the Texans were bad. Now the Texans are legitimately a Super Bowl contender. One texter says, Jared, I agree with you on the offensive line. They still suck, but you can tell it isn't anywhere near as bad as the last 2 years. That's just my gut feeling. If you want to take out, metrics, and you want to sit here and show me that actually this line is worse than the Dennis Daly, Andre Dillard lines, I mean, I'll be willing to change my mind. I'm just telling you my feel. Like, I don't think that Levis is getting murdered back there because of the offensive line. Part of me thinks Levis is getting murdered back there because sometimes Levis doesn't understand what's going on. I mean, I go back to that 3rd and 6 against Chicago. Levis is in the shotgun. The play-by-play guy for Fox is yelling out, here they come on the blitz. I'm like, okay, ball's got to go hot. Like, ball's got to come out. And Levis takes the snap, and he waits. And I'm like, throw it. And then he rolls out. Oh, God. And I'm not putting that on the offensive line. Like, when Chicago blitzes and you're sending guys into the pattern, they're going to get there. You got to get the ball out. The sack that they allowed down around the goal line on Sunday, Will McDonald got in there. I think he beat Radens. It might have been PT. I can't remember. But I was more disappointed in Brian Callahan because I wanted them to run the ball. I'm sitting there like they've got 2 timeouts, 30-something seconds, so the clock's not a factor. And I'm like, you're in the shotgun on 3rd and goal from the 8. I'm like, run a draw play with Tony Pollard. The Jets at this point are playing touchdown. You've got 2 plays to get 8 yards. Run a draw for Tony Pollard. Yeah, you ain't going to run into the end zone from the 8-yard line. But if you run a draw, as soon as the ball snapped, the Jets players are naturally going to go back. So when they start going back to defend the pass, and then you run the draw, Pollard should easily get 4 or 5 yards. So now it's 4th and goal at the 3. 4th and goal at the 4. And there's all these different things you could do. Instead, they line it up in shotgun, send 5 guys into the pattern, and Levis gets sacked. And it's like, well, you knew. Like, the Jets knew, you knew, like, ball's got to come out. And so that's why, I guess, when it comes to me, I feel like, as far as the offensive line is concerned, I feel like they're a little bit better. One texter says, this might sound crazy, but Jalen Hurts is the most boring quarterback in the league to watch. So this may sound crazy too. Ian, did you watch Monday Night Football Monday? The Eagles and the Falcons?
Most of it, second half mostly.
So I really didn't. I really didn't watch the game. And I'm going to tell you why.
It was kind of a boring game, except the end.
The Falcons just bore me.
Yeah.
It's like I could not get myself to want to watch that game.
There's lots of field goals.
I don't think Jalen Hurts is like boring. I think Jalen Hurts might be a little overrated. And that it may be AJ. You know, there may be something there. One texter says, have you watched the All-22? Tyler Boyd was open so much. Levis is getting himself killed. So I haven't watched the All-22, but I did see that the Next Gen stats say that Tyler Boyd's getting no separation as far as he was open all day. Like Blake Bedingfield, and I'm not out here shilling for PK's website, but Blake Bedingfield, the old scout for the Titans, he's director of college scouting. He convinced the Titans to draft Derrick Henry in 2016. Blake Bedingfield's been writing articles for Paul for the last however many years. I find that to be the single most insightful stuff on Paul's site. And that's not knocking Paul or Herndon or anybody else. It's just I'm really interested in what Blake has to say. And Blake was basically saying, like, Levis is waiting too long to throw the ball. That Levis is like zeroing in on one guy. And Levis is waiting too long to throw the ball. And that, you know, I thought it was very insightful. I don't want to tell you everything he said because, you know, then it'd be basically stealing. But I think a lot of the blame for the offense goes on Levis. And just things that we should expect out of a quarterback and that they've got to get him to do and understand and not just the dumb stuff. Joey from Bellevue says, I hope Andre Dillard starts on Sunday, the Dillard Malik revenge game. Does Dillard play at all for them?
I don't think so. I think we would have seen something by now.
Dillard, I mean, I'm sorry. Oof. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. That 615-737-1025 here on the program. Today was a big day. Today was the start of what should be a very, very exciting year. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
This morning, Barry said it's not fantasy hockey. You gotta actually do it on the ice. So, did you see some good things today on the ice?
I did. Yeah, I did. I think kind of the message is to start now. And today we started on time. And it's one day, but it was a good building day. I thought, there was the pace that I was looking for all through practices. A lot of these first days, you don't know what you're going to get after the first one. But I thought our leadership group really drove all through practices. And it was one day. Tomorrow's a new day. Got to bring it again. But it was a good day to start building.
Hockey training camp started today for the Predators. That was Andrew Burnett. Let me just say this. I don't care about hockey preseason, like as far as, who does what, because like the games, for the first 3 months of the year, it feels like are basically the preseason. And then by then, if your team's any good or not. And then there's the strike. They're like, get me to the start of the year and be in contention. And then, boom, here we go. But let me just say this. I am incredibly excited for the hockey season this year. I don't know when the first game I'm going to is. I do know that now that I am having a Canadian child, that I am super, super, super into this season. And I guess, my nephews think it's pretty cool that I have hockey tickets or whatever. But anywho, when it comes to the Predators this year in training camp, I'm expecting here's all I'm expecting from the Predators. I'm expecting a good season that results in a top 3 finish in the division, probably number 1 or number 2. And I expect them to make the second round of the playoffs. And my theory with the NHL is the best you can ask for is the second round of the playoffs. I don't believe in this Stanley Cup or bust kind of stuff. Because once you get to the second round, I don't remember who Florida played, Ian, in the first round last year. Probably some Scarbini team. Was it Tampa?
I think it might have been Tampa.
And I think they handled them pretty easily.
Yeah, I think so.
And then once they got to that second round and they played, they didn't play the Rangers. They played Boston. When they played Boston in the second, Boston is a legitimate cup contender. That is, you get to the second round of the NHL playoffs, everybody there for the most part is a cup contender unless somebody, upsets a 1 seed or something like that in the first round. So that's kind of my expectation. You get to the second round, anything's possible. They've got depth. They've got more goal scorers than they've ever had. And these contracts might not age well, but right now, this is when the contracts are kind of, Stamkos is still got game. Marchessault still has game. O'Reilly still got game. They signed the goalie back, all that kind of stuff. So I am incredibly excited for this hockey season. And that's my expectation, is that they have got a team that can compete for the cup, that has the assets to be able to make moves and acquire guys and things like that around the deadline if they're lacking in any way. And I think they've got the right players. I'm not going to say the right players to win the cup because, again, I don't think you can say this team has to win the cup. I don't believe in that. But I think they've got a solid group of players. They've got the right coach. I know they've got the right coach. I know the power play was a disaster in the playoffs. That's okay. And I think they got the right general manager. And so I'm excited. I did notice the line combinations today, like when they sent out an email at 6 a.m. that had the 3 different sets. As I looked through that, I saw the 3 different practice sets they had. Did you look at that this morning, Ian?
Yeah.
By the way, let me say this. That's got to be just a long day to have 3 practice sessions starting at 8 a.m. That's going to be a long day for the coaching staff.
Yep.
But regardless, I saw that they had the top line from last year, Forsberg, O'Reilly, and Nyquist. I saw the second group had Novak, Stamkos, and Marchessault. And I saw that the third group had what we would assume are going to be the third and fourth lines. And I saw that Tomasino was out there with the third line today. And Zachary LaRue, who Barry Trotz said after the AHL season he wasn't sure was ready, was out there with the fourth group. So I did kind of get excited, keeping my eye on that one. And somebody says in the YouTube chat that I'm pretending to be excited about hockey. I'm not pretending to be excited about hockey. I'm super excited about hockey. In fact, sometimes I check my brain out during commercial breaks. I know that sounds crazy, but sometimes I do. I used to check my brain out during Ask the GM when we would just do calls for 30 minutes. And it'd be like, Johnny, you're up next with the GM. Go ahead. And then I would just let Floyd and my brain would just kind of turn off and I would just think about whatever. Well, now obviously I can't do that when it's just me doing the talking. But during the commercial break, right before we came back, when I clicked my brain back on, I wanted to be like, when's the first preseason game that's at home? I know they play on Sunday on the road, but when's the first preseason game at home? Because if they play a preseason game on a weekday at home, we're going to be live out at the arena, and then it'd be exciting to go. That's what I was thinking about. So don't tell me that I'm not excited about the start of the hockey season when I'm like, oh, yeah, when's the first game that we're going to be there that we always are? Let's see. Thursday, October 10th against the Stars. Is that opening night?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'll be going to that, which I'm very, very excited about. Let's see. I don't have the preseason schedule in front of me.
I can't remember off the top of my head. Hold on. I have a little bit of it right
Okay,
now.
I got it right here. So I believe it's a Saturday and a Sunday at home against Tampa, October 5th. When is October 5th? What is that?
That's a Saturday.
So I guess all the preseason games of the weekend. So we won't be live at any of those, but that's okay. I'm excited. I mean, I'll tell you right now, this team has a chance.
I think, Saturday the 28th. Yeah, it's a home game. They have one on the 27th. That's a road game. So, yeah, it might not be till that week. Home versus Carolina. Yeah, that's Saturday the 5th. So, yeah, that looks like the first. Yeah, mostly on the weekends.
Okay, so we will be there on October 10th when they play the Dallas Stars. And I'm excited about that to open the season. Again, I think they should get to the second round of the playoffs. And once you get to the second round of the playoffs, anything is possible. Colorado, Cup contender, got to the second round of the playoffs last year and lost because that's how this sport works. The best team the Predators have ever had, 2018, got to the second round of the playoffs and lost. So that's just the expectation for the season. Now, if you listen to the very, very beginning of the show, I said we'd be giving away a 4-pack of tickets to see Metallica. Be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025, and you're going to win 4-pack of tickets to see Metallica before you can buy them at Nissan Stadium. One pair is for the show on, on Thursday, May 1st, and one pair is for Saturday, May 3rd. Tickets go on sale Friday, September 27th at 10 a.m. That's it for us. We're out of here. Stillman and Company. We'll see everybody tomorrow at 2.